Going live, going live. You're live. No, you are. We are live. It's the pre-show, everybody. It's 11:50. We got 10 minutes to go before we start the Security Plus Study Group. So we've got all Q&A, an hour of Q&A where I will ask you questions in this first hour. In the second hour, we turn it around and you ask me questions. So it's a little bit of everything today. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. Folks in the chat room wondering about the retirement date for the SY0-501. It retires in July of 2021. The new exam, the SY0-601, shows up in November of 2020. So there's an overlap there. The new one shows up in November, but the old one doesn't go away until July. So that's the difference. So they have a little bit, usually there's a 6-month period. Now they really extended it to about 9 months. Probably because of all the craziness going on with scheduling and timing and all those other things. So one never knows what is going on in those minds. Now, I've noticed they also push back Network Plus. I would have expected Network Plus to be out at the beginning of the year, kind of the March timeframe. That doesn't show up until the second half of 2021. So I think everything just kind of got pushed because of the obvious reasons, I guess. I guess that's why. All right, let's check to see how we're doing. That is the wrong picture. That's me. That should not, well, it should be me, but it should be the back of me. So that is wrong. We got to fix that so you can watch me bring this up. That should be my streaming device right there. That's what it should be. That looks much better. Now I can keep track of the stream. Recordings are going down here. You can see my Cylons are going right there. So that's good. What else we need to get going? I think those are the important ones because those two, this is a recording. This down here on the bottom right is a recording. 2 recordings, actually. And then it's recording on the YouTube. So we've got a little bit of everything going on there. The singers, we were done with that. I think we're in pretty good shape. I've got the presentation ready. Oh, this is so being recorded. They're always recorded. The study group replays are available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I don't even upload anything as long as everything was fine. So there's why. Thank you for the course. Why don't I demonstrate the SY0-601? The SY0-601 is not out yet. The exam is not available. Sorry. Yeah, that's why. That's why everybody who's working on, who's doing Security Plus is building their SY0-601 course right now. So that's why. There will be no difference. Now, I did a video that describes the differences. You can always go to YouTube and look at my video on why you should not wait for the SY0-601. And I go into extreme detail about the differences between the SY0-501 and the SY0-601. And I explain to you why the 601 is going to be much harder and why it will be so much more content. And that if you have the ability to get the SY0-501, you can, or you should. You should and you can. Both of those things, I guess. We've got all, I'll go through some of that today. And if you have detailed questions about that, you're wondering, what do you mean? Is there a thing? What is it? Blah, blah, blah. That you'll be able to figure out. You can ask questions in the second half on that. Is this version going to be stretched a couple months? 3 months exactly. The SY0-501 retires in July. The SY0-501 is no longer available in July. You may continue to take the SY0-501 exam through July. Hopefully that has answered your questions regarding the availability of the SY0-501. These will be questions, of course, that I will continue to answer until July. That's just the nature of the beast. Whenever there's a change of exams, it's different every time, and we're never quite sure, but I am quite sure. I've locked it in. So I know when all of this will be happening. And we'll talk about some of that at the beginning as well, and I'll describe it, and I'll talk more about that video. And if you have more questions, we can always answer them. I don't mind answering them. You can ask as much as you'd like. Never becomes a problem for me. I do not care. So that's one. When you take the test, you do have the option. When you sign up for it, you get to sign up for the 501 or you get to sign up for the 601. You make that decision. It's not randomized. You don't just get a random set. They are very, very different exams. They're extremely different exams. You do not want to study for the 501 and go in and take the 601. You're going to fail. That's how different it is. You do not want to study for the 601 and go in to take the 501. You will fail. That's how different it is. So that's the important part. Just pick the one you're going with. If you're going to take the 501, all your study materials should say 501. All the videos you watch should say 501. All the practice exams you take should be 501. Now, if you're taking the 601, then all of your content should say 601, but there really isn't any 601. How do you get the inside scoop? There isn't any inside scoop from me. It's all information that's publicly available on the CompTIA website. I have no secret information. So 601 exam objectives already available. There's not a whole lot more of cloud-based security on there, quite honestly. There's a little bit, but not a lot. It's one section of a domain, and they expanded out just a little bit. There was already a bit of cloud-based security on the previous version. On the SY0-501, you have SDN. They expand that out a little bit to do some additional, infrastructure as code, which is kind of what SDN is, but it goes a little more into infrastructure as code. But there's not much of that. That's about it. There's a little bit more, but the bulk of the exam it's changed quite a bit. It's changed quite a lot. We'll be getting started here in about 4 minutes. Stand by. We'll be getting to that just a moment. We'll get through all those. We've got, the Q&A link is on the website at professormesser.com/live, or you can just open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA. Since 501 and 601 are so different, if you pass the 501, should you take the 601 next year? If you pass the 501, you'll never have to take another Security Plus exam again in your life. How about that? The Security Plus certification you earn has nothing to do with the version of the questions you take. So if you pass the SY0-501, you get a Security Plus cert. If you pass the SY0-601, you get a Security Plus cert. It's exactly the same certification. It's not a 501 cert, and it's not a 601 cert. It's a Security Plus cert. That's it. So there is no delineation. There's no differentiation, rather, between those two. So someone who takes the 601 and passes that exam in November, because I guess they're a genius and they were able to pass it without studying, but let's say they pass it on the very first day, they have earned exactly the same certification that you would earn if you passed the 501 on the same day. That's it. There's no difference. And employers don't care either. They just want you to see that you have a Security Plus cert. Plus, if you think about it, if someone took the 401, what they've been doing this whole time is renewing their certification. They didn't take the 501. They didn't take the 601. But they're going to continue to have a Security Plus certification through the years by simply renewing their certification. So no, I would not expect someone to take the exam again, or a newer version of the exam. That just seems like a little much. I guess you could. But that's why. The renewal of the Security Plus certification does not require you to take the exam again. So you've got that. Which Security Plus cert is more respected? There is no more than one Security Plus certification. So there you go. There's only the one. There's Security Plus. There is no other kind of Security Plus. There's just Security Plus, and that's it. So there is no more one that is more respected than the other because there is no other. There's just the one. That helps too. Let's see. We got a minute and something for renewal. There are CEUs. There's a whole section on the CompTIA website on renewal, so you can go learn all about those things. Figure out what cert should you go for after Security Plus. Well, it depends on what you want to do with your life. What do you want to be when you grow up? How long after the release of 601 will the 501 be available for? Scroll up. Scroll. I'll talk all about this in the first 3 minutes of the stream anyway, so you get to hear it all over again. We'll just do it. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to talk about it some more. We'll talk about it until you're tired of it. And I'll just keep talking about it. So sorry about that. It's a popular question, and it comes up a lot, and I don't mind answering it. I will continue to say that over and over. There should just be a crawler at the bottom that says SY0-501 expires. Although I don't think that will help either. I think that'll just be something we don't pay any attention to after a while. We'll figure it out. Well, passing my practice exams give you a good chance of passing the real exam. That's the idea. I built them to give you the same experience, the same difficulty level, the same everything as the actual exam. So that is my hope. And other people have said so as well. It looks like it's 12 noon on my clock. That means it is time to get started. Let's get a green light right here. Bear with me a moment. Oh, look, a new version. Just the thing I need before I go live. This is ready to go. That's ready to go. I think we're ready, everybody. Let's do a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2020 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is our SY0-501 study group that we like to do every month. In this first hour, I will be asking you questions that come directly from the CompTIA SY0-501 exam objectives. There will be lots that we go through today. There's so many questions already in the chat room. Before we even get started, the pre-show was almost a show. We were talking so much about new versions of exams and that type of thing. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Let's start, though, right here. I'll tell you how you can participate live and join us today. If you are watching this live, then you can absolutely join us by going to the Professor Messer website. Open up a new browser window. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link you need. professormesser.com/QA. That will take you to a question that is waiting for you. I'll show you that question in just a moment. There's also a mobile app that you can get for your mobile device. That's redundant. That is the Socrative Student app. That is the name of the app, Socrative Student app. Those two are the ones you're looking for. There's a Socrative Teacher app. That's the one for me. Don't get that one. Get the Socrative Student app. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right. PROFESSORMESSER. So plenty of details there to go through. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you if you're watching this live. If you're watching this on the replay, you obviously won't be able to do this, but you can still follow along on the replay. If you're here live, though, you'll see a question waiting for you that asks, a company would like to restrict employees. No, that's not what it asked. That's not my rewind question. Why does my rewind question look different? This is what happens when we do a live stream like this, is the questions are not quite synced up the way one would expect sometimes. So already, I'm going to check and make sure I'm looking at the right presentation on my side. I am. Do I have the right presentation showed up on the other side? A good question. Let's see if I really do. Now you're going to be seeing all the questions before I get to them. We're going to scroll through. I did all of this. Okay, at least the second question is correct. So we're going to struggle through. The question actually asks, not this one. The question actually asked this one here. Let me put this up on the screen. There we go. Question asks, let's go to the previous one so you can see it. What framework is commonly used on a third-party website to allow users to log in with their Twitter or Google credentials? Much better if you can actually answer the question that I am posing for you. The possible answers are Radius, OAuth, AAA, CHAP, or SSO. So there you go. Those are your possible answers. Now, as we know, for those of you that have been here before, please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's professormesser.com/QA to lock in all of your answers. We're going to pretend we are on the exam. We're trying to figure it out for ourselves. We're trying to break all these things down. No answers, no hints in the chat room. That's the sort of the standing rule of what we do with the chat room. So feel free to have a look at all of those. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. How were you supposed to know? I didn't have my screen up to tell you what the link was. So that's just fine. We will figure it out as we go along. That is the fun part of this, to have all of that. Earlier on in the chat room, we were talking about a number of things. Before we come back to the answer on this, though, let's talk about how all of this works out. You, of course, are here for this Security Plus study group. We've got all questions in this first hour. I do questions during the week, though. There is a weekly Security Plus question you can get on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. There's also one at professormesser.com/Instagram. I put all my questions on Instagram as well. If you're an Instagrammer, you like a pretty picture along with your question, that's a good place to go. There's also, of course, all of my Security Plus videos, the entire course, available for you to watch, absolutely free, every minute of every video on YouTube. at professormesser.com/YouTube. Now, as we were discussing in the chat room in the pre-show, there's a lot of questions right now because we're in a bit of a transitionary period coming up for Security Plus. The SY0-501 is the current Security Plus exam. It was released on October the 4th of 2017. And CompTIA tends to update these about every 3 years. Now, what they've done this year, though, you'll see it's 3 years and a month. So it's actually coming out in November of this year. But the current version of this exam is going to retire. The SY0-501 is going to retire on July 2021. Now, that means as we sit here in September, you have quite a long time before this exam goes away. My recommendation to you, my strong recommendation to you, is to keep studying for the SY0-501 until it's not possible anymore for you to do so. The newer exam is going to be much more difficult. I'll explain more about that in a moment. And as soon as you pass your exam, the certification continues to be good for 3 years or until you renew it. So you're not losing anything by taking the SY0-501, the current version. If anything, I think you've got advantages to taking the current version. I think taking the newer version will be a disadvantage. The newer version of the SY0-601 will be available in November of 2020, as CompTIA tells us. We don't know the exact date, but that's the roundabout when this will be available. We'll see it available in November. The exam objectives are on the CompTIA website. You can look through them. But as I've created for you, I've created an extensive breakdown of the differences between these two exams, and I give you examples of why I think you should not wait to take the SY0-601. In fact, you should take the SY0-501 until the last possible chance. There's a reason for that. And I talk about all these questions that the chat room is asking about right now, such as, don't employers like to see the new version? I'll answer that question in the video. The video is on YouTube. It's called Why You Shouldn't Wait for the SY0-601 Security Plus exam. And plus all of the other questions that always come up about these exams, about what the differences are, what the timings are, what the detailed by detailed topical differences are. And I do an extensive analysis of the number of topics and the differences in those numbers of topics between those two. And I answer questions like, if the new version is out, isn't it a waste of time to get the 501? It's exactly the opposite. It is a waste of time to go after the new one as soon as it comes out. I talk all about that in that video on YouTube, why you shouldn't wait for the SY0-601 exam. This exam, by the way, whether you take the SY0-501 or the SY0-601, you will see that it is a single exam you have to pass. You'll have 90 minutes to take the exam, and you might get 90 questions. You might get fewer, the maximum of 90. The passing score on a scale from 100 to 900 is a 750. It's kind of odd to be able there, but it's something like that. We know the questions are worth a different amount for each question, so you can't really tell how many questions that is, but just do your best. I think it'll be fine once you go through it. It is a mix of multiple choice questions and what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. We'll talk about what those are in just a moment. All of my videos, all of my audio files, my course notes, my practice exams, exclusive access to Q&A for this study group is available as part of my Success Bundle. It's on my website. The SY0-501 Success Bundle has everything in one single package, including an exclusive for this bundle, which is my Exam Hacks ebook. That is an ebook I wrote that will give you tips on how to take the exam. It doesn't have anything to do with Security Plus. It's more about how do you study and prepare for an exam of the type that CompTIA gives you. What can you do during the exam to optimize your exam experience and the number of points you're going to earn? And then how do you handle things afterwards? Pass or fail? What's available there? It's all in that Exam Hacks ebook. That is all part of my Success Bundle. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/501SB. And you can learn all about it. There are also some practice exams available on my site. I call these my Take 10 Challenge because they're 10-question exams. professormesser.com/take10. You can find all those free questions available for you right now. Most of them are questions that are archives of these study groups. So it's something that can help keep your memory up and your see how well you do with some of these questions that we ask on these study groups. Some of you asked earlier about podcast versions and replays. The video version of this is available to watch immediately afterwards. It's just automatically added to YouTube as soon as we're done. There is a audio-only version available in podcast form. So if you have a podcast listening program, you'd like to have it automatically download, you can find the links to this to add it to your podcasting program at professormesser.com/podcast. And I know that Google's been changing over their podcast thing. Amazon's adding their own podcasting program. So I've added now everything to Google. So you should be able to find it on Google Podcasts. I will also, I've already submitted my application to have those added to Amazon's podcasting whenever it is released. I don't think they've announced that the date on when that will be, but it'll be there as well. The video replay is available immediately afterwards. And of course, about a day later, my marketing manager, Lori, goes through and puts timestamps on all of these. So you can go right to the question you're interested in or right to the question in the after show that you're interested in by going to the YouTube video description and simply clicking on the time, and it will take you right to that section of the video. Lori is watching this replay right now and desperately trying to find out when the next timestamp is going to be. And she's watching the replay of the chat room as well. So please say hello to Lori. And if you like these timestamps, please thank her for having to listen to me drone on for hours just so she can put in those timestamps. Thank you, Lori. It's pretty awesome. Let's go back to the question I asked earlier, which was not this question, which sounds like it would be a great question. We'll have to do that one someday. We did that one last week. But the question asked, what framework is commonly used on a third-party website to allow users to log in with their Twitter or Google credentials? Was it Radius, OAuth, AAA, CHAP, or SSO? And how did we do? We had 67% of us said OAuth, 24% of us said SSO. And then single digits for everything else, 5% for Radius, 3% for AAA, 2% for CHAP. If we go with the folks that got the big number right, OAuth was the right answer in this particular case. OAuth is that method. If you ever see a website that you've never been to and it says log in with your Google credentials, log in with your Twitter credentials, that's what that is. It allows you to authenticate using those credentials and provides you with the authentication you need to gain access. And that way you can use an existing set of credentials that's already there. You don't have to re-register. You don't have to give a third party your email address or any details with that. It's simply passed through to Google or Twitter, and then your authentication approvals passed back to that website. So it makes it a little bit easier if you're trying to authenticate somewhere. It can speed things up. I just have to remember which one I used the next time I go back to that site. I think that's the only downside is I have to remember in my brain what I used. I have to make a note in my software I use for my wallet, my digital wallet, which one I was using there. So that was one that I always ran into with this. So hopefully that can help you with what you're doing. SSO is single sign-on. That's when you would use the same username and password. You put that in one time at the beginning of the day, for example, and then you never have to put in a username and password ever again. Not quite the scenario we were talking about here. There are single sign-on options available that will work across different domains to different sites, but that was not what we were asking here. We're asking a third-party website that would prompt you for your Twitter or your Google credentials when you log in. Radius and AAA, Radius is a type of AAA. Radius is a protocol used to send usernames and passwords to a AAA server. That is not what we're talking about in this case either. And it would not be CHAP, which is an authentication protocol, certainly, but that is not what we're doing when we ask for a Twitter or Google credential. The best answer, the only answer in this case is B, OAuth. 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, if you got that to that point, you were able to access the Q&A, you were able to see everything you need there, then you're doing pretty well, because now we can move on to the performance-based question of the day. Our performance-based question is a question that is not multiple choice. At the beginning of your Security Plus exam, you will get a handful of performance-based questions. So you will certainly find questions that talk, that might be a fill in the blank. They could be one where you have to drag and drop. It could be a matching question. It could be one where you have to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what the performance-based question is going to be, but it will still be topics that come directly from the Security Plus exam objectives. So I have a performance-based question for you today. This performance-based question is a matching question, and it says match the device to the description. Match the device to the description. So for those of you listening in on the podcast side, on the audio only side, the four options, the four devices I have are an HSM, a DLP, a firewall, and a NAC. Those are the four devices. Now I have 7 descriptions, so there will be some left over at the end. We will not match everything at the end when we work through them. But these 7 descriptions that I have are: A is allow incoming network traffic. B is securely store web server encryption keys. C is communicate wirelessly to other devices. D is block known operating system vulnerabilities. E is block PII. F is check a device for anti-malware software. And G is distribute network traffic across multiple servers. So you've got some options there to go through. Now for bonus, we're gonna match 4 of these. Whatever's left over, tell me what device would fit into that scenario. I think that would be a good one to use as a bonus there at the end, and we'll go through all of that. Now, if you get this at the beginning of your exam, one of the strategies we like to use, and this is being mentioned in the chat room, is it's sometimes nice to jump over these and go to the multiple choice questions, which multiple choice questions we're very comfortable with those. Choose A, B, C, or D. And then you can go all the way through the multiple choice and then circle back to the performance-based questions if you would like. So that's the goal with this, is that you want to find the best scenario, the best way you take a test. I like to go to the multiple choice because I find that the multiple choice questions either jog my memory about something that I can use on a performance-based question, or they'll just simply answer some of the questions I have about this. Now, sometimes CompTIA has said on some of these questions, they might give you partial credit, which is basically a non-answer. We just don't know which ones they would give partial credit on. And they don't say that if you are going to get it or not. You can't tell when you get your score whether you got partial credit or not either. So I guess it kind of doesn't matter whether they tell us or not. We still won't know if we got it for all of those. That's one of those challenges, I guess, when working through these. Match these devices to these descriptions. We have HSM, DLP, firewall, and NAC. So we also have allow incoming network traffic, securely store web server encryption keys, communicate wirelessly to other devices, block known operating system vulnerabilities, block PII, check a device for anti-malware software, and distribute network traffic across multiple servers. So you've got a few options there to run through. Maybe you're familiar with these. Let's see how you did with this performance-based question. Let's start with the very top. In HSM, we had those 7 different options that were available there, and HSM is the one we were most interested on this one to work through. If you've ever worked in an environment that had a lot of server keys that had to be managed, this is where you would store those web server encryption keys. This service that you would be able to run on that server. Imagine having 100 web servers and they all had different encryption keys that had to be managed. It'd be nice if you could manage them from a secure perspective, a secure location. And HSM is what does that. That would be answer B, securely store the web server encryption keys. We've got other options here for DLP. That's our second choice. DLP matches, that is a data loss prevention. That matches your E, block PII. Your personally identifiable information is what we're most worried about when we deal with that. So whenever you work through all of these and you're trying to figure out what is going to be the best one to work through, DLP certainly matches blocking the PII. Whenever I start looking through and trying to figure out what we're going to do with these questions, I try to find the questions that are the ones that are most different or most unlike what we've done previously. So when you get into working with a hardware security module, a data loss prevention, you have to kind of know what those things are as you step through them. A network access control, you almost have to reset your brain into knowing what those are, but then you also have to know what they are used for. So just knowing, flipping back and forth like a flashcard, just knowing what the name is doesn't help you. You don't get flashcard questions on the exam. You get questions like this. So that's why I'm putting this in kind of a different context so you can get a feel for that. Firewall, though, there's no firewall abbreviation. It's just a firewall. And the best choice for firewall is A, allow incoming network traffic. Incoming or even block incoming or outgoing network traffic. Being able to manage the flow of network traffic is what you can certainly be able to do with a firewall. And these days, it's a next generation firewall is what you're putting on your networks. And fourth on our list was network access control, or NAC. Network access control would match best with F, check a device for anti-malware software. It's very common for connecting to a network that network access control will first do a check of your system. So it can check to see, are you running antivirus? Does it have the latest set of signatures? Is your personal firewall enabled? Does it have the correct rules in the firewall to protect the things that need to be protected? It will check all of those things, and if it doesn't match those, it will not allow you access to the network. And it might give you some responses on what you can do. Here's things you should do to be able to find those. So those are your answers. Your hardware security module matches with the securely stored web server encryption keys. Your data loss prevention is there to block your PII, or personally identifiable information. Your firewall allows incoming network traffic. And then your network access control checks a device for anti-malware software. But as I mentioned, we have these three left over that weren't matched to anything. The three left over were communicate wirelessly to other devices, block known operating system vulnerabilities, and distribute network traffic across multiple servers. So let's go through what the three devices we would use to be able to perform these functions. So let's start with communicate wirelessly to other devices. You're going to need some type of access point to make that happen. Your access point is the one that will allow you to communicate with 802.11 networking. The next on our list is block known operating system vulnerabilities. That fits very nicely into an intrusion prevention system, an IPS. That is exactly what you would do with that. And then lastly, distribute network traffic across multiple servers is, if we hit the button, a load balancer. Load balancers allow you to take that and distribute that load across multiple servers. In fact, if you are on the Professor Messer website right now, you're communicating to my site through a load balancer. I have a load balancer and then multiple web servers behind that. So that way, if one of those web servers happens to fail for whatever reason, and boy, that happens all the time. You never know when that's going to happen. I shouldn't say all the time, not all the time with my server, but those types of things happen all the time with other people's servers. That one of the things that's nice is that to your eyes, nothing has changed. The site is still up and running. Everything is working normally because the load balancer recognizes the site is down on that server and simply shifts the load to the other available services. So those are your bonus questions. Communicating wirelessly to other devices is an access point, blocking known operating system vulnerabilities is an IPS, and then distributing network traffic across multiple servers would be done with a load balancer. Each one of these devices is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with what all of these are to be able to do that. In this particular case, it's probably very common, I've seen on the exam, that they would give you the 4 devices and then 7 different options. So on the actual exam, you just have 3 left over at the end to be able to work with. In our case, I thought it'd be nice to give you a little bit extra. We'll fill in the blanks for those last 3, and maybe that will help you if one of those questions happens to come up on your exam. Well, that's our performance-based question of the month. You can always go back into our archives. Every month is a different performance-based question. Some are very different than others, so you're welcome to go back and have a look at those as well. Let's go and move to a multiple choice-based question. Let's say we've gone through the handful of performance-based questions at the beginning of our exam. And let's quickly, before we break this out, I'm going to look at one other thing on my side and make sure that I have the right thing ready to go on your side. Yeah, I think I do. Here is the next question, which is very similar to the first question we had, but not the same. So don't think I'm giving you a gimme, because this is definitely not a gimme. The question asks, instead of logging in with a username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. Which of the following would best describe this arrangement? So here's this one. You think you might know what this is, but you actually don't. Instead of logging in with a username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. Which of the following would best describe this arrangement? Would it be multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, federation, TOTP, or 802.1x? Which one of those would it be? It would be either multi-factor authentication, a single sign-on, federation, TOTP, or 802.1x. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We not only don't want to know what the answer is, we also don't want to know what the answer isn't. So we're going to pretend we're going to be taking this exam and stepping through all of these. So see if you happen to know what this is. You're logging in. Instead of logging in with the username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. That is the way to do it. Hopefully you're familiar with these and working through them. Whenever I start looking at these questions, though, I often find myself trying to figure out what it is not. I think that's a useful tool to use on the exam. I think whenever I start breaking through and trying to figure out all the details of this is, okay, definitely not that, probably not that. Well, that gives me 2 or 3 that I can now go with. So shrinking down the possible answers is a very useful strategy in your exam. So make sure you take advantage of that. This might be one of those where we do that, where it's probably a little bit different to break this down. And we want to figure out those details, kind of break down all the different pieces. See if you happen to know what this is. You probably had this occur before, and we just sort of talked about some of these and breaking them down. This is the good way to do it. So let's see how we do when we're working through those. In the chat room, how are the messages with answers getting deleted? I am deleting them. That's how that works. Is it a bot? It is not. It's a human. That's how those work. Let's see how we do with this one. Instead of logging in with the username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. Which of the following would best describe this arrangement? So multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, federation, TOTP, and 802.1x. Well, 50% of us right down the middle said federation is what it is. That's what we would work through to have all of those pieces. Whenever we start working through also the other options, though, we got some pretty good responses there. 32% of you, about a third, said single sign-on is what that is. 10% said multi-factor authentication. So that's a pretty good mix of those. Only 6% said TOTP, and only 2% said 802.1x. Well, the real key here, and the thing that was happening, the broad term of what was happening, in fact, we had kind of an example of this at the beginning, where we had the actual protocols that were used to make this happen. Those protocols were allowing us to use federation. That is what 50% of you chose on this one. Federation means that you can provide access to others on the network by using a third party to be able to establish the authentication and the authorization for this. So you've got some options to be able to work through this. So you can log in with Twitter, log in with Facebook, log in with LinkedIn, log in with whatever it happens to be. You have to, of course, on the person who sets this up on their site has to create this trust relationship with the third party, obviously, and how much trust is there. But once that is there and in place, they can now use those. I could do that on my site, for example. In fact, if you go to the chat, the 24/7 chat that's at the bottom of professormesser.com, it gives you options to log in with other types of credentials. And that's a very good example of using federation so that you don't have to create a separate registration or separate login for all of those and being able to work through it. Whenever I start breaking through all of these, that might help as well. If you start breaking through, yep, there's a 24/7 chat on professormesser.com at the bottom of every page. This comes from my 4.1 video AAA and authentication. One thing I've added to the this month to the study group is there's a QR code on all of the explanation pages. You can pop open your camera at any time. Just point your camera at it. You don't have to take a picture, but if you point your camera at it, it will take you right to that video. So that might help you if you're watching this on the replay or you're watching it live. You can, of course, pop open the video and have a look at it. Although now you've got two things happening at the same time, and that overloads me. I can't do all of that. Now, we had some other options on here, like single sign-on. Single sign-on, as we mentioned earlier, is where you log in one time at the beginning of the day, and then you never have to log on again to access all of the different resources that are accessible to you. That does not describe the situation that's occurring here, where we have to log in or provide credentials to a third party. Multi-factor authentication. The multi-factor authentication is where we use multiple factors. A password, something we know, maybe a fingerprint, something we are. Those types of things are useful as well to authenticate, but it doesn't describe the process of how you are authenticating or what website you're authenticating to. The time-based one-time password is 6%. That is not something we would use. That's a type of multi-factor authentication that we would use. 802.1x is a way to manage the authentication to a network based on generally a centralized database. So if you already have a centralized database out there like Active Directory, you can log in with your Active Directory credentials to gain access to a wireless network, for example. That's what 802.1x allows us to do. In this case, 51% of us now got this one absolutely right. Federation was the right answer. Let's keep this going. I've got another multiple choice question right behind it. And the next question asks, a company has calculated the likelihood of a tornado hitting the company headquarters in a calendar year. That likelihood is 0.001%. Which of the following describes this calculation? Is the description of that calculation ARO, ALE, SLA, SLE, or SSO? A company has calculated that the likelihood of a tornado hitting the company headquarters in a calendar year is 0.001%. Which of the following describes this calculation? Is it ARO, ALE, SLA, SLE, or SSO? If you think you know the answer, lock your answer in at professormesser.com/QA. As I mentioned, if you're watching this in the replay, that link won't be available to you, but you can still follow along with us. Find that at professormesser.com/QA. Absolutely get you there. Folks are looking for the CompTIA study objectives, since I've already mentioned them 12 times in this live stream. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and it'll take you right to the page. There's a link there that will take you to the page, I should say. That's something that's very useful to be able to break those out. I don't keep them on my site. I just put a link on my site to put that over there, to have all of those there. See if you're familiar with this. When you're dealing with security and you're trying to figure out how much money do we allocate towards the risk associated with what's happening in our organization, these are the types of calculations that you end up doing, because you have to decide, are we going to have an off-site location that we store our data or use as a disaster recovery? I don't know. How much should we pay for that? What's the likelihood that we're going to need it? Well, it's 0.001%. In the case of a tornado, of course, you have to lump in all of the other risk as well. Risk calculations are a challenge to understand what those are. Let's see how you answered it. We have 61% of you said that it's an ARO. 24% of you, though, said it's an ALE. And then single digits for SLE, SLA. 1% said SSO. Now, SSO was an answer on the first two questions already. So I'm not sure how we managed to pull anybody in with the SSO answer again, but there it is. Let's talk about what these different calculations are, just so you're familiar with them. The likelihood that something is going to happen is called an annualized rate of occurrence, an ARO. So how likely is a particular thing going to happen? How often will a hurricane hit? How often will something happen on a particular network or to a particular facility? Those are important things to know as you're going through this. So that likelihood, that percentage it's going to happen, is an annualized rate of occurrence for a single year, or an ARO. That very much describes what we were talking about with an ARO. Happened to my numbers. 63% of you said it was ARO. That is the right answer to be able to get that there. Now, there are other things on here, the ALE, the SLA, the SLE. SLE, for example, is a single loss expectancy. So if there was a tornado that came through and we did have a loss, what would the monetary loss of that be? Well, if it was something like a tornado, it probably would be in the millions of dollars if it took out our entire facility. So that would be a very large single loss expectancy, or SLE. The other statistic that's useful to know is the ALE, or the annual loss expectancy, which is simply multiplying the ARO times the SLE, so that you know in a single year, that's how much. We probably would not expect a tornado to hit more than once, but let's say we expect the tornado to hit 5 times. We take that $1 million that we lose and we multiply it by 5 times, it'd be $5 million in a year. That's what those statistics are able to provide us with. So that is the ARO, the SLE, and the ALE. I put 2 others on here. The SLA, then the SSO have nothing to do with risk in this particular case. The service level agreement, or SLA, is a contractual agreement you make with a third-party provider that specifies what expectation of service you are going to have. And then we have an SSO, single sign-on. That's what you use to log in the morning, the beginning of the day. And then you have access to all the resources that you ever need access to for the rest of the day. So that's single sign-on. Hopefully I've added single sign-on as an answer for every single question. No, I don't think I have. I don't think we did that and go that far. ARO by far was the right answer. 63% of you got that one absolutely right. That is a good statistic to know. That's a good piece of information to know. Make sure you're familiar with those for your exams. To another question. Here we go. Next one asks, a security engineer needs to securely exchange encryption keys over an insecure network connection. Which of the following would be the best way to do this? Would it be Diffie-Hellman, RC4, SHA-2, bcrypt, or ECB? A security engineer needs to securely exchange encryption keys over an insecure network connection. Which of the following would be the best way to do this? Would it be Diffie-Hellman, RC4, SHA-2, bcrypt, or ECB? Now, if you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. That is the best way to do it. Go to all of those. You probably know how to do this. You've probably seen this one. And the answer, of course, is, as they mentioned, Damon mentioned in the chat room, is single sign-on. That is the right answer. Thank you for that and working through this. That's whenever I start looking through these and trying to figure out the details. That's where I try to figure out, okay, that is the right answer. That's the one I was trying to find. You may find an option in some of the tools you use today that would answer this question for you. That's not really a very good hint, is it, to have that? But maybe that's one that you would run into. Security engineer needs to securely exchange encryption keys over an insecure network connection. Which of the following would be the best way to do this? Let's see how you answered it. 54% of you, just over half, said Diffie-Hellman. That's a pretty good number. We got 24% of you that said you would use SHA-2. Still a pretty good number there. 13%, double digits, came in with bcrypt. You got 7% that said RC4, and then 4% that said ECB. Well, if you ever see anybody talking about exchanging encryption keys, but being able to exchange encryption keys in a way that would not actually send the key over the network, then you're probably working with something like Diffie-Hellman. That is, Diffie-Hellman is a key exchange method. That's what Diffie-Hellman does. Doesn't do encryption. It doesn't do hashing. It's not a digital signature mechanism. That's all it does is exchange keys. So if you ever see DH or Diffie-Hellman, you're talking about exchanging keys. That's what this does. And it's one that provides you with the ability to both sides can come up with a key that's identical to each other, but that key was never sent over the network. Really remarkable. Very commonly used for things like perfect forward secrecy. You'll see it listed in the algorithms that are being used as EDH or DHE, where you have elliptic curve cryptography. You can even add to it to have the elliptic curve cryptography added to the EC Diffie-Hellman ephemeral. So you've got huge options there to be able to do that. How do they do that, by the way? How do they do that key exchange? Well, both sides, of course, have a private key associated with them. What you want to do is take your private key and someone else's public key and combine them together. They do the same thing on their side, except reverse it. They take their private key and your public key. They combine those together. As it turns out, when you combine them together using Diffie-Hellman, you come up with exactly the same symmetric key. And that symmetric key, of course, is not associated or it has nothing to do with the private key or the public key. It's its own separate key. And now you've got a key that you can use for symmetric encryption, except you never sent that key across the network. It's like magic. That's how that works. Diffie-Hellman was the right answer. Now, why wouldn't it be SHA-2? SHA-2 is an encryption algorithm. Couldn't you just encrypt it and send it over the network? Yes, you could, but you would need an encryption key to do that, and you don't have one yet. So that would not be what you would use either. 13% of you said bcrypt. Bcrypt is a great way to perform multiple hashing algorithms. It's a great hashing library, an encryption library. So bcrypt very commonly used for hashing and encryption, but that library has nothing to do with exchanging encryption keys over an insecure network. RC4 is a hashing algorithm. RC4 is an encryption algorithm, rather. So RC4 very commonly was used in WEP, but it's used other places as well. We don't see RC4 being used much any longer, though. Usually you're using something like AES these days for having all of those. Not used for exchanging encryption keys over an insecure network. And ECB, electronic code block, is a block cipher to be able to encrypt data. That is not what you would use to be able to securely exchange encryption keys over an insecure network. The best option for this is a Diffie-Hellman. That's your only option. 55% of you got that one absolutely right to have that there. So if you're noticing in these questions, there are a lot of different topics on this. The questions on the exam are going to be much more involved. And as some people were talking about earlier, having plenty of Q&A. You, of course, need to watch the videos. You need to read the books. You need to do some hands-on. But before you go in the exam, it's nice to be able to test yourself to see, did you learn the content? And what I found was that there was not a lot of really good practice exams on the market. The exams were either asking questions that were not in the style of what CompTIA was asking, or very often the questions go off into asking things that are not on the exam objectives. And that just drives me crazy when you don't have the right information to test yourself with. So I wrote 3 separate practice exams, 90-question practice exams, multiple choice questions, performance-based questions, all in my practice exams book. But I wanted to add a little piece to it. I wanted to add a little bit extra. So this is from the actual book. This is a PDF of the book that you can purchase a PDF or a physical version of. So the question asks, you've hired a third party to gather information about your company's servers and data. The third party will not have direct access to your internal network, but can gather information from any other source. Which of the following would best describe this approach? Would it be backdoor testing, passive reconnaissance, OS fingerprinting, or gray box penetration testing? Now, you could pop up in another window, put your answer in, and go to the next one. As your clock is checking down, you can just go to the next one that's on the list. But I've also got links in the PDF. So if you just wanted the answer, A, B, C, or D, you can go to the quick answer page. I like to go to the details page, though. I'm going to click right here in the PDF. It automatically takes me to that page. So it shows me the question again, which is I've hired a third party. Is it backdoor testing, passive reconnaissance, OS fingerprinting, or gray box penetration testing? And I tell you the answer is B, passive reconnaissance. And then I tell you why that's the right answer, which I think is a good thing to know. But my problem is when I answer it wrong, I want to know why was that the wrong answer. So what I did is for every wrong answer, I explained to you why that answer is wrong. So that if you got it wrong, you'll learn why it's wrong. And if that topic ever comes up again, you might be able to get it right, especially if any of the wrong answers come up in a question. You want to be able to get the question right. And then lastly, you can, at the very bottom, I tell you what video this is from. If you got the digital version, you can simply click on the link. It will open up the page to the video. Or if you got the book version, like I have here, there's a physical book version of this that has all of these questions in it. Well, you can't click the book version, but of course, all the QR codes are in the book version, so you can put your camera up to it and go right to the video. all from a single question. When you're done, you just hit the back button in your PDF reader and you can simply go to the next one. So that is on the practice exam. I think that's a very different practice exam than anything else I've ever seen. This is the practice exams I wish I had when I was studying for my certifications. Go to professormesser.com/securitype. You can learn all about the practice exams and be able to understand why there's those details and what all is available on that. All of those different things. professormesser.com/securitype is there. If you have other questions on that, we can, of course, talk about it in the after show as well. Let's do some more Q&A. I've got another one here for you. This question asks, an unauthorized user has connected to a WPA2 protected network without using the WPA2 passphrase. Which of the following most likely describes this attack? Is it bluejacking, wireless jamming, a WPS attack, a wireless disassociation attack, or a denial of service? The question again was that an unauthorized user has connected to a WPA2 protected network without using the WPA2 passphrase. Which of the following most likely describes this attack? Is it bluejacking, wireless jamming, WPS attack, wireless disassociation attack, or denial of service? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA. You'd think it would be SSO. It seems like it would be SSO. Not one of the options, oddly enough. Or is it F, SSO? Bluejacking, wireless jamming, WPS attack, wireless disassociation attack, denial of service, or SSO. It's one of those. Maybe it's one of those. Maybe it would not be one of those. When am I releasing my SY0-501 video series? As soon as the SY0-501 video series is available. I usually release them as the videos are done. So right now we're in the process of building the course. And I say we, like there's a bunch of people building, because me. I am building the course. And as soon as the course is built, I start shooting the videos. And as I finish the video, it's edited immediately because I edit it. And then I post it to YouTube. And then it's available. So they will be posted as they are available. You'll probably start seeing them roll out about that November timeframe. I expect that's probably about right to have that there. I don't have a specific date because whenever they're done, that's when I post them. So and I don't have anybody on me saying, where are they? Where are they? I don't have a boss. So I don't have anybody yelling at me to hurry up. I like to make them a high quality set of videos. I want to make sure the right content is in the videos. I really spend a lot of time in this phase when I'm building it. So this one, I really go through the content because I can't go back. Once the video's shot, that's it. I can't make that video again. So for me, it's really important that it's a good series. I want this to be the best series available. So I don't want another video series to be of a higher quality, and I still want them all to be free. So it's a balancing act. I could just throw something together and put it out there. I could hire a third party for pennies a day from some other country to put something together, but I'm not going to do that. I think there's good stuff there that needs to be talked about. And my experience is one of someone in the cybersecurity arena. I worked for a next generation firewall company. So a lot of these things that I talk about in Security Plus, I did full time. So I want you to have that same level of information coming from me, someone who's been seeing the biggest networks in the world, looked at their traffic, been able to see what type of security challenges they were dealing with. There's good stuff to learn, and I want to make sure you're able to learn it. Let's learn the answer to this one, though. An unauthorized user is connected to a WPA2 protected network without using the WPA2 passphrase. Which of the following most likely describes this attack? Is it bluejacking, wireless jamming, WPS attack, wireless disassociation attack, or denial of service? All five of these real attacks, but only one of them would best describe this particular scenario. So there were 52% of you that said this is a WPS attack. 26% of you, just over a quarter of you, said wireless disassociation attack. Both of those wireless attacks make sense to me. 14% said bluejacking, another wireless attack. 7% said wireless jamming, obviously a wireless attack. And then 2% of you said denial of service. Now, only one of these really matches. How could somebody get on a WPA2 network one of the strongest protections we have for wireless networks is WPA2. So how are they able to do it without using the WPA2 passphrase? Well, they most likely were able to do that by using WPS, Wi-Fi Protected Setup. This was a technology we created to add on to 802.11 because people couldn't handle putting in the passphrases and configuring the encryption types and changing the methods that were used. There are all these different options whenever you're configuring that your wireless settings. So to try to make it easier, we created WPS so you could easily set up these devices and connect to them. You could use a personal identification number. You could use a push button on the access point. Some of them support near field communication, NFC, which is really nice. And then you can also have a USB method where you have a USB key that you would plug into the device. That's an option that's no longer available. They took that one out of the standard. Unfortunately, there is a very common vulnerability with WPS, a design flaw. This personal identification number is 8 digits long, but it's really 7 digits in a checksum, which means there's 10 million or so possible combinations. But it's actually worse than that. The first 4 digits are one part of the PIN. The last 3 digits are the other part of the PIN. So you've now gone from 10 million possible combinations down to 11,000. And for those of you that have done any type of brute force attack, you can go through 11,000 pretty quick and figure out what the correct answer is. So that is one that does create a bit of a problem for us, is that now if you're using an access point that does not protect against brute force attacks, they all do these days, but maybe it's an older one that doesn't. Now you can easily get access to this network if WPS is enabled. So that would be the way that you could get access to a WPA2 network without using the WPA2 passphrase, is you were able to take advantage of these vulnerabilities that were built into WPS. 53% of you answered C. That is the right answer, WPS, to have that there. A wireless disassociation attack is effectively a denial of service attack. It removes people, it disassociates them from the network, effectively de-authenticates them. You may also see that as a wireless de-auth attack. Takes them off the network. It disconnects them for the duration of that attack. So that would be considered a denial of service. Not the right answer. The 25% of you that answered wireless disassociation, nope. 2% of you that said denial of service, wouldn't be that either. 14% of you said bluejacking. Bluejacking, certainly a wireless attack type, but it's used for Bluetooth. That's what the blue is in bluejacking. So Bluetooth is not what we're using in this particular case. So that would not be the one that would be there. And then 6% said wireless jamming. Wireless jamming is something that's there. 6% of you shows wireless jamming would be another denial of service attack to be able to do that. The deauth attacks can be combined with many different things, but it's not always combined with anything. Sometimes a deauth attack is just a deauth attack. So it's not, maybe the whole intention is just to keep people off the network. But it could be used for other things as well to provide access. But wireless deauth is not the right answer in this particular case. The WPS is the one that you would use to be able to make that happen. So certainly one of those capabilities. There's lots of different kinds of attacks through the years. These days, there are no WPA2 attacks. Every WPA2 is very solid these days. Till we find the next vulnerability, at least. That's how technology works. That's how security works. Everything is secure until the moment it's not anymore, and then we have to make it secure again. That's just the nature of the beast. Trust me, there's plenty of people trying to get into WPA2, and WPA2, as it stands today, is perfectly fine. It's perfectly, you're not going to have any secret ways to get into it. Not until we find it. Maybe you're the one that finds it. Go find that new vulnerability in WPA2 and see if you can break into those networks. If you're someone who's watching this video for continuing education credit, here's the process you would follow. Now, if you don't know what continuing education unit credit is, then this doesn't apply to you. But for those of you that do use this to be able to renew your certification or for many other things, you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Make sure you follow these instructions because these instructions are part of the process. So find the Contact Us link at the top or bottom of my site. Click that. It will bring up a form. Put in your name. Put in your email address. Make sure the email address is correct because I'm emailing this back to you. In the subject line, put in that this is the Security Plus study group from September 2020. That's when we're talking right now live. And then in the body of the message on a line all by itself, put the super secret code words of WPS attack. WPS attack is the super secret code words of the month. Put that in. You can also put anything else you would like in the rest of the body of that message. I read through every single one of those. I'm not able to respond back to every single one of those, but you certainly can put anything else in there. I like to read through them. I love to read your comments. Please, you're more than welcome to put anything in there, but you don't have to. Just put WPS attack. I'll know what you're looking for. I know what you need. I'll send you back an email that has been digitally signed, which says, yes, you must have watched this. Here is your 1 hour credit, your 1 hour CEU for that particular piece. So more than happy to do that. It takes me about a week to turn these around. So I apologize, but it just I have to kind of accumulate them into a big pile and then go through them and being able to make all of that happen. We have time to squeeze in another question, so let's do that. The next question on our list asks, a security administrator would like to identify all services running on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be netstat, nmap, ifconfig, TCP dump, or dig? A security administrator would like to identify all services running on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be netstat, nmap, ifconfig, TCP dump, or dig? Which one is it? If you think you know the answer, no answers in the chat room. You go to professormesser.com/QA. What was the email you send that code to? There is no email. You have to follow the instructions that I provided, and you will be able to send that message and earn your CEU. The process of going through those steps to send it is part of the confirmation process. If I receive CEUs through any other method, they unfortunately get thrown out. So that's the way you would do it. That's what you have to think about as you break through all of that. Figure out the details. So hopefully that will help you as well. Maybe and if you missed it, you can, of course, when this is over, the replay is available immediately afterwards. Make a note of the timestamp. Go through there. There must have been an error. Why did I not put SSO as an option? Well, just write it in. Write an SSO if you would like to have that there. That's one we should just continue to have as a standard answer. That's one. Maybe you've had to do this as well. If you're someone who's had to audit a network, you've had to work through challenges on a network and find services running on a remote device, you may have done this. So this may be something you've run into and being able to work through all of that. Let's see how you did. A security administrator would like to identify all services running on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be netstat, nmap, ifconfig, TCP dump, dig, or SSO? 47% of you, not a majority, but a plurality, pretty close plurality to half, said nmap. 35%, though, over a third of you say netstat is what you would use for that. 9% said TCP dump. 7% said dig. Yes, I do. And 2% of you said ifconfig. So what would you use if you were trying to identify all services running on a remote device? Then you would, of all the available options here, the one that would be the best choice is the nmap, the network mapper. Nmap allows you to scan for all of the available ports on a remote device, so you at least, at the very minimum, know what ports that device was listening on. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily identify all the services. So what you would probably run is a service scan. So nmap allows you not only to see that a port is open, but nmap will send additional queries to that port to see what kind of response it can get. And based on the response, it will tell you the service running on that port. So if you took your web server and you ran it on port 1111, which you can do, you can run your service anywhere you would like. And nmap will not only find that port 1111 is open, port 1111, port 1111 is open, but it will also if you tell it to, send a service query to that port, get a response from your web server. It will evaluate that response and go, oh, that's Apache version 2.2. That's the level of detail that Nmap will give you. Nmap will also query the device at the operating system level. There's certain specially crafted packets that it will send, and certain responses is expecting to see back because different operating systems respond in different ways. And it will tell you not only is Apache 2.2 running on port 1111, but it's running on CentOS 7. Might even give you more details from there. There's also extended capabilities with scripts that you can run in the Nmap scripting engine. If you're a Lua, someone who scripts in Lua, then you can run scripts that way. Very, very useful. And it allows you to learn so much about a remote device by sending some of these questions, some of these queries. Nmap really does all the heavy lifting. It knows exactly what to do, what to ask to be able to get you the answers you need. That is what you would choose. In this case, is Nmap. That's your best answer. Lua, L-U-A, is Lua. Netstat, 34% of you said Netstat. Netstat, very good to tell you what ports are open on your device, on your local machine, but not great to tell you what services are running on a remote device. So Netstat's not going to help you for that remote computer. I guess you have to run Netstat on that computer to make it happen, but you aren't on that computer. You don't even know what's running on that computer and have all those pieces. We have TCP dump, which is great for capturing packets. And if you happen to capture packets that were to services that are running on that device at that particular moment, then you'd be able to identify them. But you have to have data going back and forth. So not the best choice if you want to identify everything. Nmap will take care of that for you because it queries everything. Dig. Dig is a DNS resolver, a DNS query tool that you can use at the command line. It is the replacement effectively for NSLOOKUP. That is not what you would use to find remote services running on a device. And then you have 2% that ifconfig, the interface configuration. Useful to know your IP addresses on your local device, but it doesn't tell you what services are running on a remote device. So that is what you would use is Nmap. That is the best way to identify all services running on a remote device. If you used RDP and ran Netstat, you would be identifying all services running on your local device because you would be local on that device because you RDP'd into it. See how that works? Not the best option. And again, I think that's a valid way to do it. That's a perfectly effective and technologically accurate answer. But the question asked, which of the following would be the best choice for this task? So would you first RDP in, make sure you had the username and password. Oh, wait, you don't have to have the right RDP version. Or maybe they're not running RDP, maybe they're running VNC. We'll get the right thing. We'll connect. We'll log in. We'll get to a command prompt. We'll make sure we're running as an administrator or with a sudo prompt. And then we'll run Netstat. Or just run Nmap. So that's why Nmap is the best answer here. When people try to figure out in their exam, what do they mean when they say best? That's what they mean. And it will be very clear on the exam which one of these will be best. The right answer should jump right out at you when we talk about the best possible answer. That is one I think that can really help you on your exam as well. So keep that idea in mind. If it doesn't jump right out at you on the exam, then you're missing either part of the question or maybe you don't understand part of what they are asking you about. But that is definitely one you should be familiar with and breaking through all of that. Can you believe we went through an hour of Q&A already? All the questions we did today came from the professormesser.com/objectives link. We'll link you over to the CompTIA website and make sure you have these objectives. It will tell you everything you have to know for the exam. Everything on your exam you have to know is in this list. So it's a very valuable, absolutely free document that you need to have the moment you start your studies, and you should reference this before you go into your exam. Before you schedule your exam, step all the way through it and check mark everything you know. And if there's something you don't know, circle it. You need to know that one. After you know that, then I think you can go through the pieces of trying to figure out how to get into that exam room or take your exam at home these days. Either way. We do one of these study groups once a month. I do really 4 study groups a month. I do 2 A+ study groups, a Network Plus study group, and a Security Plus study group. The next Security Plus study group is on October 21st. The next live event we do will be on October the 6th and October the 8th. So we got a couple weeks before that comes up. And then the Network Plus study group is on October the 14th to have all of those things there. You can find out when the next live event is going to be by going to my calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. For those of you that have worked through these study groups before, you've worked through trying to learn everything that's in the Security Plus exam, you know that it's a lot of content. And I've got all of these videos, hundreds and hundreds of videos that I work with and create. There's well over 100 for Security Plus. I've taken all of those and put them into a single PDF. So I have written notes for you that break out the way different keyloggers work, the different attacks and the way they're working, all the text from the videos, all the graphics from the videos, all the charts from the videos. They are in one document, and that is my Security Plus course notes. It's a relatively inexpensive way to have all the notes in one place in an electronic form PDF or a physical form in a physical book. It's the same content, it's just in a physical printed dead tree version. Of course, you can do that. If you buy the physical version, you get the digital for free as well. So while you're waiting on that to arrive, you can sift through the digital version like I have here on my site. I also bundle some things together. So if you really like the course notes and you really like the practice exams, I bundle them together for a lower price. So you might save a little bit by doing that as well. It's on my website, professormesser.com/securitycn. Well, there's plenty to go through. We talked about so many different topics, and there's so much more to talk about today. We're not done for the day. We're just done for the regular show. Now we're going to turn this around. So instead of me asking you questions, you're going to ask me questions. So this will be the after show in just a moment. Stick around for that. Don't forget about all the free videos out on the YouTube, professormesser.com/YouTube, and the weekly Security Plus question that is on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter, and Instagram, professormesser.com/Instagram. Of course, the links are on my website to my course notes and my exams. Great resources to have for anybody who's taking your Security Plus certification. We will talk about all of the new exam topics, so many other things happening. I'll tell you when the new series of our monthly study groups will happen, because there will obviously be a 601 series that's coming up shortly. You can learn all about it in the after show. Stick around for that. Thanks for being here for the first hour, though. We love to have you here, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. So let's see if I can get this going. If you would bear with me a moment, I'm going to get the phone lines up and running on my side. And then I've got lots of things to go through to talk about with Security Plus and when the next things are going to be and all of that. So I will click a few things on my side. If you will bear with me a moment, I'm the only one here. So I am producing my own show and having all of this here. There's a lot to produce, apparently. There's my web front end. Let's host the show there. Let's start a show. One moment, please. I'm going to call into my own show. This show is all done in the cloud. So I get to do that part where I call into my cloud-based service right now, and you'll be able to hear some of that craziness. On my side, we're going to type in some codes on the screen, and this is going to say,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I will do that if I remember what it is. Here it is. And then the nice lady says,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Why, thank you, nice lady. It is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is not Ninja 1. It is not football. It is an actual, real personal identification number. This means that you could also call in. I will take questions from the chat room, of course. So if you would like to put your questions in the chat room, I'm watching that as it goes by. But there's also a phone number you can call anywhere in the continental U.S. is 855-785-RJ45. If you are west of the Rockies, it's 855-785-7545. That will get you toll-free number anywhere in the continental U.S. Now, if you were somewhere else, if you are outside the continental U.S., you can still call for free. You can certainly do that. Make sure that you use Skype or something that can call a toll-free number. Skype is free and available. You put a +1 at the beginning. The +1, 855-785-7545. And you can, of course, call in there as well. Now, while we're waiting for folks to call in, one of the things you probably have seen if you've looked at my Success Bundle is that the people that own the Success Bundle also get a priority Q&A in the after show. So I have a question that did come in, and the question that came in is from Simi, who asked, what is the best way to study for the Security Plus other than doing practice tests? Flashcards, notes, or something else? What really would be the best way to study for Security Plus? This is a question that does come up a lot. The question came up even this week on Reddit a couple of times to have this here. And I really recommend 4 different approaches, 4 different things you should use to study for your exam. You would really need all 4 of these to give you the best possible outcome for your exam. Some people can get away with fewer than all 4 of these, but if you do, you're going to have a less chance of passing your exam. So these are the 4 things I think everybody should have. I think everybody should have a good book, sometimes 2 good books. It depends on how many books you have available to you and I guess how much money you have to purchase books with. But books are relatively inexpensive. They contain just huge amounts of content because you can pack a lot of content into a printed form. So books are incredibly valuable along those lines. Make sure you have a good book. The other one is make sure you have some videos. Having someone describe a topic or show you an attack. You know, in my Security Plus videos, I show you a DAuth attack. I show you the different types of attacks that you can perform, and you get to see me do that on the screen. This is what the attackers use to bring down this type of network. So that's valuable. Plus, you can also step through command line prompts and get some good hands-on, which happens to be my third choice. My third recommendation for you is make sure you get plenty of good hands-on. In the Security Plus exam, it's a very generic set of commands for the 501, things like running an nmap scan, things like doing a trace route, performing a ping, doing a netstat. Those are very good commands to be familiar with because you get an idea of what it's telling you. So if you do get a multiple choice question that talks about those things, you've already run that command before. You know what the output of that command is supposed to give you, and you'll be able to answer that, be able to see if it's there. So that's the third piece that I recommend. And the fourth piece I recommend is plenty of Q&A. After you've read the book, after you've gone through the videos, after you've done the hands-on, do you really remember it? And one of the best ways to remember it is to go through a practice exam. So whether they're my practice exams or anybody else's, I think it's a very important core piece to those 4 things that you would need to maximize what you would be doing for your certification exam. That, like I said, you could get away with fewer than these. There have been times I've taken a certification exam and I had 3 of those. Doesn't give you the best possible percentage for success, but if you're able to make do, you would at least be able to get those things there. That's the key. One of the things that Simi asked in this question was, how about flashcards? And I guess flashcards are good to a point, but don't become dependent on or even have an expectation that you will get questions on your exam that are flashcard questions. CompTIA does not ask what I call flashcard questions on their exam. You won't see a question that asks, what secure port is used by HTTPS? They're not going to ask you. Or they won't say, what secure protocol is used by port 443? They're not going to ask you that. That's a gimme. That's a trivia question. That's a flashcard question. HTTPS 443, HTTPS. You're not going to get that. You're going to get a much more involved question. There's going to be a scenario. There's going to be multiple sentences. There's going to be sometimes information thrown in that has nothing to do with the answer. They are not gimmies on the Security Plus exam. You don't get much of those gimmies on the exam, and none of them are trivia questions. So I don't necessarily recommend understanding or going through and memorizing flashcard comments. But if your flashcards say what protocol is used by 443 and it has HTTPS, which is used to provide encryption in web browsers, for example, someone who's purchasing something online with a credit card. You know, that is a very good flashcard. You're not only understanding the flashcard definition or what HTTPS stands for, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. That's not going to help you on the exam. But if you just have an understanding of what that means, how would you use that thing, that's valuable. So don't go in with the pure flashcard method, but certainly start using and working through flashcards in a way that would really help you understand the concept behind the flashcard. That I can get behind. That I'm fine with. I think that would work for you as well. Now, for those of you who asked questions about Security Plus, weren't here at the beginning, the SY0-501 exam, which was the one that we talked through today. All the questions on the study group today were from the 501 exam. That 501 exam retires in July. So as we sit here in September, you have plenty of time to study and pass your 501 exam. Get to it. The 601 exam, it will be released in November. So as we sit here in September, it's in a couple of months. We'll probably have this exam out and available in a couple of months. Some of you say you're going to wait to the 601 exam, and I cannot disagree with that more. I don't think you should ever wait to take a certification exam one, because there's value to having that certification in your pocket. Why would you wait to get something that valuable? You should start working right now to get that valuable thing. Also, the 601 exam, when it's released in November, there will be almost nothing available to study from. Takes a long time to create a training course. Takes months to create a training course. Takes even longer to get a book published. So this is going to be the end of the year, beginning of next year, until you finally start seeing things released and available on the market to any large amount, because you want to have some options to have that there. So I would not, plus the 601 exam, much more involved. Much bigger exam. If you're trying to get the details of that, I have a video I published on my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube, and you can see that I have a video called Why You Should Not Wait for the SY0-601. And even I think once it's published, why you should not take the SY0-601 until you have to. There's obviously going to be a retirement date in July where you don't have a choice anymore. So at that point, you don't have a choice anymore. You got to take the 601. We will all be in the same boat for the 601. But I think if at all possible, and if you are trying to figure out right now what to do, let me tell you, go take the SY0-501. Do not take the SY0-601. Take the 501. The 501 is the one you should be taking. Take the 501 exam. So that's my recommendation to you. Now, I realize some of you, you're not going to listen to that. You're going to take the 601, and that's fine. Just know that when the 601 comes out, you'll have practically nothing to study from. That's your challenge. So as much as you may want to take the exam in November, you still might not be able to take the exam in November. That's it. It's like saying the 601 is too hard and take the easier one. Yes, the 601 is going to be much harder to study for because there is 50% more exam topics on the exam. So that's why. So that's where I'm coming from with that. I give you all the reasoning behind that. I give you the detailed numbers behind all of those things in my video, why you should not wait for the SY0-601. So that's where I go with on that one. They're going to make it much harder for you on the 601. And I realize at some point, July of 2021, everybody's going to take the 601, and we're just going to be all in the same boat to have that there. Let's now jump over to the phone lines and take our first call from the 773 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up, Professor? It's Juan.
Hey, Juan. Thanks for calling.
Good. Hey, man. Quick question. I was taking they are wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
Hello? Thank you. And I had a quick question on one of them. I was wondering if we could review it.
We
question yep. 825.
All right.
On the practice exam, and I just had a quick question because I want to understand this and make sure that when it comes to taking the test, I'm not confusing one item over the other.
All right.
And the question asks, your security team has been provided with an uncredentialed vulnerability scan. Is it vulnerability? Yes, vulnerability scan report created by a third party. Which of the following would you expect to see on this report? A, a summary of all files with invalid group assignments, B, a list of all unpatched operating system files, C, a version of the web server software in use, or D, a list of local user accounts. Now, initially, I had picked a list of unpatched operating system files, and I got it wrong, and I went through the answers on why I got it wrong. But I feel that a vulnerability scan, the answer turned out to be that the version of a web server software that's in use. But that would be more like I think, in my opinion, like an Nmap type of scan versus a vulnerability scan.
And that's a good point with this. There are a couple of key phrases here to break down, not only in the question, but some of the answers. And just so you're aware, a number of vulnerability scanners, I think of Nessus is a good example of this, uses Nmap to perform a huge chunk of the scan itself. So before it even starts performing its detailed vulnerability scan, it even does an Nmap scan before it does anything. So you can put Nmap squarely in a category of a vulnerability scanner, along with all the other things that it happens to do. And in fact, many of the scripts that come with Nmap are vulnerability scan scripts. So Nmap certainly has a vulnerability scanning functionality as part of it. But the thing that was very important to these answers, and you kind of caught it as you were going through it, is that you can find a number of vulnerabilities with a vulnerability scanner that is uncredentialed, and it tells you, hey, this particular machine does not have a particular Microsoft patch on it. Therefore, we must know that there are certain operating system files that were not patched on that computer. You're absolutely right. You were spot on with that. But that wasn't the answer. The answer said, what would you expect to see on this report? A list of all unpatched operating system files. And although vulnerability scans are very good at finding vulnerabilities across the network that would show you cases where certain operating system files would not be patched, it will not tell you all of the unpatched operating system files because it does not have access to the operating system. It only has access to what it can get to from the outside. And because this is an uncredentialed vulnerability scan, it's on the outside, it's not on the inside. There's no way that it could know all of the unpatched operating system files. I realize that is a nit in this very big hair ball of a question, but it's a very important delineation in that answer that helps you understand why the right answer of an uncredentialed vulnerability scan would be the web server software in use, because you can figure out the web server software without having logged into that device. I think that probably is the one thing in this whole question that differentiates that answer from anything else that you would run into.
I appreciate it, Professor. I mean, I feel I've taken Network Plus before, and I feel there are answers in there like this that are designed to just throw you off, But I want to be able to, like I said, to understand and be able to say, okay, well, not all of them, just some. You know what I'm saying? Just
absolutely.
Understanding all of them. And the last thing I want to say was thank you, man, because I'm COVID really threw my career off, and I was watching this group chat in June, and I was like, you know what, it's time for a change. Let me give Messer a shot, and I appreciate everything you do.
Good for you.
I'm taking the test Tuesday, and I feel confident going in, and a lot has to do with the material that you provided for us. These questions are phenomenal. The only thing I'm running into is memorizing. I've taken all 3 exams, and I scored, mid 70s, 75, and now I went back, reviewed my answers, read why I got them wrong, retook the exams, and now I'm like 87, 90%.
Great.
I feel comfortable that I'm going to go in there. I'm going to rock it. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do, because I've ran into so many other exams where the questions are wrong. The explanation for the question is very vague. It looks like they weren't vetted. The questions were not vetted at all. Going through these, and you know what? They mess up with your confidence, because you think you know something, and the explanation is just not there for you to convince yourself. It's just not there. But with the detail, this stuff it's awesome. I wish you would have done 5 instead of 3, but you're a busy guy. I get it.
I wish I could have done 5 as well, but it is about time and space in this particular case, and they still only have 24 hours in a day. As soon as they fix that, I'm on it.
All right, man. Well, thank you, and I appreciate everything you do, and I will see you in the chat.
Best of luck with that exam. You're going to do great. Best of luck.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. I think that is, and there's 2 or 3 things to take away from that. Number one, you're in control of your own destiny with these things. I looked at this craziness with COVID as an opportunity. A lot of people ran into situations that were not in the IT field, and they lost their jobs. Their jobs were curtailed. They got fewer hours. There's less income coming in. It was a bad situation for everybody, not just people outside IT, but also in IT as well. We did amazing amounts of scrambling, but we got to work a lot during this. A huge number of IT professionals kept their job and had to keep doing this, primarily because we really relied on technology during these last numbers of months. So we had to have really good technology people to help us along with that. Between that and the gaming industry, both of those have done very well during all of this craziness, although it's been a little hectic and a little chaotic. So I get it. This is a great opportunity for you to sit down and figure out, where should we really go in the future? What should we really be doing? I'm more than happy to give you tools that you can use to make that happen, but you are the one that has to make that happen. I always say you're the one doing the hard part. You're the one who has to take the exam. You have to learn this content. You have to get that certification and then keep it going and keep moving. But what a great business to be in. The vertical market of IT gives you huge opportunities. It's an open sky. Whatever you'd like to do, there are jobs available for you to do it. So if I can help in any little way with practice exams, course notes, the video series, whatever it is, we're going to keep doing that so that you can get that job or get that better job. So I'm glad you were able to take care of it. The other takeaway, it's the reason I created the practice exams. And this is not really a horn to toot on the practice exam side, but I wrote those questions. I tried to read through and understand the mindset of CompTIA. And then I wanted to write questions that they're all original questions. I write all of the questions myself. So they're not handed out for other people to write. I create all of the content. It's all original content that I wrote, every single word. So of the things I wrote, how could I make it sound like CompTIA? And then how can I make it have the same twist? You know, that M. Night Shyamalan is a constant. You're waiting for it on every movie. There's a same theme. There's the same voice that he uses for everything that he does. Same thing with CompTIA. All of those exams have that same twist or piece that they throw in there that drive us all crazy when we're taking the exam. How can I put the same crazy into my questions? If you want to put it that way. I don't think they're that crazy when it comes right down to it. But there's little things like we just saw in that question, the word all files in the operating system makes a big difference when you're reading through these answers. So that's what I wanted to put in those questions, is how can I make it sound like CompTIA wrote this even though they didn't? So I kind of ghost wrote all of the questions, all 3 of those exams, all 90 of those questions I ghost wrote in their voice. Whether they realize it or not, I did that, which is perfectly legitimate as long as it's not copying their content, which I didn't. I wrote all these as new exams. I just kind of wrote it like they would say it. So hopefully that helps with some of the things you're doing as well, Juan. I think that'll help you. I think that's almost as important as knowing the content itself, because you almost know what to expect when now you're reading through the actual exam questions and getting there. Back to the phone lines. Thanks for holding for so long. 210 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Professor, my name's Josh, calling from South Texas.
Josh from Texas. We will not mess with you, sir. What can we do for you?
Thank you. Hi. So just pretty much how you were saying about the CompTIA questions, about how you word them and whatnot with your content. Throughout since this whole pandemic started and whatnot, I've been actually taking boot camps and enrolling in courses, distance learning courses for the stackable CompTIA certs, for A+, Net+, and Security Plus. I already got my Security Plus, and along the way, throughout the whole courses, I always noticed with the CompTIA questions specifically with how they word them. My question is, for any intermediate cert or higher level certification for any new entry IT newcomer, do you feel that CompTIA, with the way they word their questions and present them on the exam, will prepare any candidate for further search like that in a well-rounded fashion?
I think there's sort of two things that are rolled up in that question, because the certification is a means to an end. Ideally, I realize some people take certifications just because they like to take certs. There's some people that take certifications because they're really just trying to learn the topics that are associated with what's on that cert. But for the vast majority of people getting a certification, they're doing this for a reason. They're trying to get a job. They're trying to get a better job. They're trying to get a job in a different area of IT. And so there's a reason, there's a method to this madness of us going through all of this. A lot of people jump on CompTIA's questions as being badly written, and I think there was probably a case to be made in the past for that. I think they have done tremendously in making their questions better. They're still not 100% there yet, but their questions are much better than they used to be. So I think some of the old reputation they have may be stuck to them a little bit. It's just going to take time to brush that off. I think the questions today are very good. I often tell people on the exam, the right answer should jump out at you. It should be very obvious when you read through the question. If it's not very obvious, it probably isn't because of the way the question was written. It's probably more in the way that you understand the topic that's being discussed. That isn't 100% of the time, but most of the time in your exam, that is the particular case. And I realize, as I mentioned, that I had to kind of write the questions in CompTIA style. So there's a CompTIA style that you kind of have to sift through to be able to get through the exam. But that's really no different than if you were to take a Microsoft exam. Microsoft exams have their own set of challenges and their own language or voice that they use for their questions. Their answers are often extremely complex, that have tons of command line prompts on them. They have their own style of asking the question, and their style is very different than CompTIA's style. Same thing, I took a lot of certification exams from Palo Alto Networks. The Palo Alto Networks exams are much more in your face. They're much more, tell me the answer to this. Tell me the answer to that. Here's a box that shows a bunch of security policies. Tell me the answer to this. So they're more like punching you to get through the exam. Boom, 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 which is a little different than CompTIA and very different than Microsoft. So there is this in the industry, a set of processes and procedures and things we have to step through to get through an industry or to get through a manufacturer's set of certifications. You kind of wish they would just ask it. Just ask me the question instead of leading me down this road of Jack has a computer and the computer makes a beeping noise and Jack did these things and you sat down and you did this thing. So what day is it? Like, what? Where did that question? That took a turn. That's not what I was expecting this to ask me. But you run into those from every once in a while. You're like, okay, I kind of get it. Now I'm sort of used to expecting the twist in the CompTIA question. They're not all like that, but you do run into those every so often. I would probably tell you, if you were looking at A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, those continue to be some of the most popular entry-level certifications in the industry. If there were others that were more popular, I would be making videos for those. Someday, maybe there will be. I'll make videos for those whenever we get to that point. But I'm trying to find the right mix. No certification exam is perfect. None of them really are the exam you can hold up and say, finally, the certification exam that didn't mess around, didn't give me crazy questions. I didn't hit any questions that were weird, that were written funny, or didn't have any grammatical errors. All of them have that. CCNA has that. VMware has that. Microsoft has that. CompTIA has that. They all have that. There's all little bits of that for these. It's just that the certifications themselves have different values in the eyes of the hiring managers, and most of the time that's really what we're interested in. I want to tell people it's not a hazing as much as we tend to make it seem like it is, but should there be any hazing in a certification exam? It just seems like it's very personal at times, but the reality is it's not. It's just more of the way a company likes to style their questions, and it's kind of up to us to learn their language so that we can properly negotiate the exam and finally get through it. And the reality is, on Microsoft, CompTIA, VMware, Palo Alto Networks, Cisco, or whoever it is, it's really not that big of a departure. They give us a little bit of a window to work with that we could fail and still pass the exam. We can get questions wrong and still successfully pass the exam. But you kind of have to get used to the weirdness of their questions at times and work your way through it. Should we have to? Probably not. Are we going to? It's kind of always been that way in the industry. Until I start writing their exams for them, we're just going to have to kind of work with what they've given us, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, hey, Professor, I know there's a lot of other viewers that probably want to ask questions, but I just want to tell you firsthand, I appreciate your content a lot. It helped me pass Security Plus back in July, and right now, as I said before, I'm going through the stackable cert course for
Nice.
A Plus and Net Plus, and I'm working on A Plus. So hopefully, I can use your content to the best of the best and pass with that as well.
It's there and available if you need it, Josh. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
That's one of the challenges I think we all have in taking these exams, is that fortunately, Josh's already been through the Security Plus. I think that's probably the most difficult exam to get through from an exam taking perspective. The exam questions are much bigger. They are much more complex. There's much more nuance to their questions. When you get to Network Plus and A Plus, the questions may have at least as many sentences in them, but they're relatively more straightforward. They're really trying to focus you on one particular topic. The questions focus you on that topic. It really does jump out at you and you're able to answer them. So I think you're going to have a much better, a much friendlier experience with Network Plus and A Plus than you did with Security Plus. I hope you find that anyway. Let's go back to the phone lines, the 214 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you on hold, caller?
Hello.
Oh, hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Clarice. I'm calling from Dallas, Texas.
Texas calling again. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I have two questions. Please, my first question is, I bought the practice questions from your website.
Thank
you. I got all the three, like in an exam simulation way, like 90 minutes and programmed a time. But I keep on getting from 65 to 70%, 65, 70 questions answered correctly. So my question is, because the book says I need to, if you have up to 90 questions correct before you are ready for the exam. So I keep on having 65 to 70. So I want to know would you advise me to study, because I'm planning on studying more on what I'm missing, because I know the areas in where I'm missing. So after studies on studying on these areas, would you advise me to retake the practice questions again or find other practice questions from other places? That's my question.
Well, first off, if you're getting, you said 65 of them, you're getting correct?
Yeah, 65 to 70 questions correct.
That's not bad. That's a pretty good number. You're not far off at getting what I think is the highest tier. In my book, I break them down into 3 tiers. Less than 63 questions is probably definitely more help that you would need. 63 to 72 is pretty close to what I think is a comfortable lead for someone who wants to walk into the exam. Obviously, in the book, I show 73 to 81 questions correct is really what you would be shooting for, but you're 65, 73 is not far away. So you're just an incremental jump further to be able to hit that particular mark. So that's the good part of all of this, is that you're not far off of those pieces. And as the book tells you, there's certain topics you can always go back and see, what topic did I miss? Let me drill down into that topic and maybe learn more about those pieces of it. I can really focus you in 3 areas. You're obviously doing the practice exam, so that area is good. What type of book are you using for your studies?
I'm using the Darby Gibson Get Certified, Get Ahead.
Great. So that's a fantastic book. Gibson's Security Plus Get Ahead book is a fantastic book. It's probably the one that most people use, most people like. It is a well-respected book, so that's a good one. If you had a different book, my answer is usually go get his, because that's usually what I'll say, is that if you're working from a different book, that would be a good secondary book to have. If that's your primary book, you're probably in just fine shape with having that book. You got the videos to reference. You've got the practice exams to go through, so you can figure out what you get right and what you get wrong and why you got it right and why you got it wrong. The other piece would maybe more hands-on. And it may be a point where you're going farther out hands-on than just command lines. There's obviously a handful of command lines you need to know for Security Plus. There's traceroute, there's netstat, there's nmap, and there's others as well. But there may be a time when you want to do more hands-on, that is build your own IPsec tunnel so that you can really understand the nuances of IPsec and how it is used, and why you would set it up in tunnel mode, what you would do with it once it was in tunnel mode. I have a set of labs I like because I've worked with these folks for years and years. It's on my website under my Security Plus recommendations. And those particular study resources, I have some available that can help you get more hands-on in those areas. They are the practice labs. The folks at Practice Labs have amazing labs that they have worked on. Let me see if I can get it up on my screen since we're talking here and I've got you on the phone. Those folks who are watching, I'll flip over to this so we can see this. It's on my website under my Security Plus training tab under Security Plus study recommendations. And you can get a feel for what those particular recommendations might be. I'm going to bring this up and view the page on my side so that we can all look at that. And in that list is a set where I mentioned plenty of hands-on. And the plenty of hands-on are the practice labs. The folks at Practice Labs have created just a ton of SY0-501 labs. This is their website that has the practice labs on it. And they have a whole set for Security Plus. And look at all the different modules they have. They have a firewall, rule-based management, firewalls and evasion, NAT and OpenSSH, network vulnerabilities, application data, password cracking. You do your own password cracking, configure your own IDS and your own honeypot. They've got encryption. It just goes on and on. They have all these different labs on their site for this. It's not inexpensive. They are for this set of labs, it's $129 for a year's worth of access, but it does have extensive Security Plus access on here. Just tons of things to go through from a lab perspective. So if you didn't want to set up labs yourself, that might be a good one to go with. And you can step through each one of the topics, or just the topics that you're really struggling with, run through the labs associated with that. And now you'll have a little more knowledge and a practical experience of how these labs are used and what you would do with them. I think that's probably the best thing I can recommend, is more hands-on, whether it's labs you do yourself or labs through a third party like Practice Labs.
Yeah, I think you didn't really get my question. Let me reformulate. My question is, do you think, after reviewing everything, do you think I should retake the practice exams? That's what I'm asking. Or do I have to just go ahead?
I think given the score you were getting on the practice exams, it doesn't do you much good just to run through them again. The best part that you should do now is figure out where you missed those particular topics on the practice exams. And then once you do that, absolutely take the practice exams again. Absolutely go through them. Again, you don't want to memorize the questions so much, but certainly see if you can recognize where you might have gotten it wrong the first time through, especially maybe just study the wrong questions you got and see if you're able to answer them right this time and why you think that question should be right. Absolutely. That's why I created 3 of those in the book, so you'd be able to step through 3 separate sets of exams. You could start with one, kind of refresh your studies based on that. Then do the second one. You're going to find even probably fewer places that you need to study. And then the third one would be that final run through. But absolutely take advantage of those practice exams and run through them again before you're able to go into your final exam.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is this. I haven't scheduled my exam yet, but I'm thinking of taking it before the 10th of October. Yeah, that's in like 2 weeks to 3 weeks time.
Right.
I wanted to know if is it possible to schedule it like days before, or do you have to schedule it months before? Is there any requirement on that?
There's not a requirement. The only requirement is availability. So, of course, these days you can take the test online or you can take the test in a testing center. When you take the test online, the availability will be based on who is available to proctor that exam, because during an online exam, they're watching you through your camera. They're every minute of what you're doing is recorded. They are able to really watch you as you're taking the exam. But that means somebody has to be there on the other side to be able to do that. Same thing for the testing center. Somebody has to be available at the testing center. The testing center has to be open, first of all, and then someone has to be there, and there has to be a slot available for you to take your exam. They're probably limiting who can be in a testing center exam room at any particular time. And so there may be a limit or challenges with scheduling because of that. If there was a availability tomorrow, you could book it right now and take the test tomorrow. It just depends on if there is availability there or not. What some people even do, and this is sort of a motivational thing, they will set an exam date. They're going to say, I'm going to take this exam in a month, and they'll set their exam date. They'll go online and they'll book it, and they'll say on October the 23rd, I'm going to take this exam. Now, as they get close to October 23rd, it's October the 20th, and they realize, wow, I am not ready for this exam. They simply go online and they push it out a week, or they push it out 2 weeks. And so you can change the date as long as it's 48 hours, maybe it's even 24 now, but as long as there's a time frame they give you, you can change and push that date out anytime you want, as long as you're not within that particular window. And a lot of people use that as a tool to get them ready, to focus their timings, to make them and push them down a particular date. But you still have the option to push it out further if it's not going exactly the way you would like. That might be something you might want to consider as well. But as long as there's a slot available either locally or online, you can book it whenever you'd like.
All right. Thanks a lot for that. I really needed this. And I appreciate your help, because your questions are really, I've gone through many, and those are really the best I have gone through, because it gives me that feeling of the exam. So I'm happy about that, because in the first session of the exam, I was like, what? Why is Professor Messer making these questions so long? They were so long for me.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about this, because I haven't seen this before from other questions. And then when I went for the second one, I was like prepared, I knew, those things will happen. And I was like more comfortable that this is good. But the first one, trust me, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to take this exam because it is too much. And then I became more comfortable. So I really appreciate your help. Good job to you, and encourage more courage to that. Thanks a lot.
I'm glad they helped. Best of luck. You're going to do great on the exam.
Thank you.
I think that's the thing that I was most surprised of when I when I started writing these questions and I started thinking about how they asked the questions, and I look at, once I finished, these were really, really, really long questions. This is what I remembered from the exams years ago when I took them as well, is that they were really, really long questions. So whenever I start going through and trying to figure out how do I simulate the exam experience, I thought they were too long, but then I went back and realized, no, this is exactly the style they used on the exam. And I mentioned in my introduction and how to use the book that you really do have to watch your time on the exam. That's a big tip for everybody who's getting ready for Security Plus. Time management is so important because it takes so long to read through these questions. So make sure you're watching the clock. Make sure you're not spending more than time than you should be on some of these performance-based questions. It might be better for you to go ahead and get 5 multiple choice questions answered rather than stumble through a single performance-based question. Now, we don't know what those points are worth, but it seems like there may be time management skills that would come into play here. So another thing to keep in mind with that. Back to the phones, 412 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Kevin. How are you?
Hey, Kevin.
I'm calling from Maryland.
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Absolutely. Just wanted to say that I really, really appreciate all of your videos and everything that you've been teaching. I was thinking about, I keep pushing out my test date. so every time I say, okay, I'm gonna take it in October, and then I'll say I'm gonna take it in November, and then I keep going back to your study guide and everything. So I guess I just wanted to know 2 things. What is the best time, I guess, to take it, or when do you think that you should feel comfortable taking it? And the simulation questions are the ones that are really kind of worrying me. So because I don't want them to just pull something out of nowhere. So what do you have for me?
There's 2 things I would recommend. First, let's start with, when are you ready to take the exam? Because that's probably one of the most popular questions I get. And I think one of the best barometers is the CompTIA exam objectives. For those watching, I've got the SY0-501 exam objectives on the screen. This is the PDF I always recommend that people download because it tells you everything you need to know for the exam. So I'm going to fast forward to the first section for the example, which is section 1.0. It's the first domain, which is threats, attacks, and vulnerabilities. Section 1.1 is given a scenario, analyze indicators of compromise, and determine the type of malware. And they give you a list of the malware, which is viruses, crypto malware, ransomware, worm, Trojan, rootkit, keylogger, adware, spyware, bots, rat, logic bomb, and backdoor. So already we have a finite set of malware that we need to be familiar with. Now we need to understand what does this malware look like? How does it get on our systems? And then what do we do to qualify that as being? How is it crypto malware different than ransomware? How is a worm different than a rootkit? Those are the things that become pretty important. If you can go through each one of those bullets and talk to somebody and say, let me tell you what a virus is, and you can explain a virus to somebody, you can explain how someone gets infected with the virus and what it looks like when it's on their system, you can check that one off. Then we'll go to crypto malware. If you can explain to someone what crypto malware is, how it gets on your system, and what it looks like when it gets there, you can check that one off. Then you go to ransomware, maybe even explain how crypto malware and ransomware differ or how they are similar, and then explain how it gets on your system and what it looks like. And you can do that for each one of those bullets. Then you're done with section 1.1. Now go to section 1.2 and do exactly the same thing. And you can see how big section 1.2 is. Section 1 in general, the first domain is just big. But if you can now go to section 1.2 and go through all the social engineering, the application service attacks, the wireless attacks, and the cryptographic attacks, and do that same explanation to somebody, talk to them about what this is, how it affects it, how it gets on a system, all of those things, then you could check all of them off, and of course, circle the ones you don't know, study up on the ones you don't know. Now you're ready to take the exam once you've gone through every single bullet that's in the exam objectives. Now, that is an extreme case. And in fact, you may want to go through this list and say, all right, I know 90% of this. I'm comfortable with that. Now let's go and take the exam, because it's going to be very difficult to get 100% of this stuck in your brain because it's just such a huge exam. 501 is a big exam. And 601 is going to be 50% larger. So these are all tons of equipment, tons of things you need to have in your brain and just remember about. I'm still scrolling through this for those of you watching. We're just scrolling and it's just tons of content you have to know. That's why they mention it's best if you take this exam if you've already got a year's worth of experience in the industry, because some of these are just going to be you're already going to know them because you've worked with them. Just look at all this, just tons, 50% bigger on the 601 exam. So that's one of the things I would tell people is if you're getting through this, you're working through this exam, that is the one that I would focus on and work through. That is the piece that I think would be really, really useful for some of the things that you're doing. That is the answer to the first question, which is what should you be doing to really focus in on that? What was the second question, Kevin?
Yes, sir. It was about the simulation. So just wondering what specific ones they mostly weigh on. And as I'm studying, I was using U and Udemy. So I was trying to to get the best of both worlds with you guys. So
sure.
Cryptography is probably my weakest point. So so the simulations and I guess how to focus on the weakest point, but you might have already touched on it. But
well, there's a couple things you can do. Well, of course, I created my practice exams to have performance-based questions that are very similar in at least scope to what you would get on the exam. I think there's probably some I've come up with. Some people have told me some of the ones in your book, very similar to what's in the exam, but I just think that's because there's only so many questions you can get from the exam objectives of putting things in a particular order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You can always go back to all of my study group sessions, because the very first new question of every month is a different performance-based question, and do that for the last 12 months. If you go back to September of last year, it's a similar type of question to what I did today, but it's the same content, topical content. So it's another question on here are devices and match those with the description. They're just different devices. So after you get past a year of my stuff, you may see some that tends to repeat itself in style, if not a little bit of scope. But you've got a whole year's worth of performance-based questions, and each month is a different type of question. Some months I give you a firewall, and you have to build a firewall rule. Some months are putting things in an order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. Some months are matching questions like the one today. So the important part, though, is all of these questions come directly from the exam objectives. So if you know the exam objectives, you're going to be able to answer these questions. It's just a different way of asking it. It's just not multiple choice. It's a drag and drop question. It's a matching question. It's a putting things in order question. But that's where I would recommend you kind of focus in on not necessarily the type and style of the way the question is being asked. Worry about the content. And if you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question.
Okay. Gotcha. And the same thing goes with the ports too as well, correct? Because I was told that we have to know all of the ports. Is that true as well?
How many ports are listed specifically in the Security Plus exam objectives? I guess that's sort of I'm sort of throwing that out there as a rhetorical question, but if you look through it, there are no ports specifically listed in the Security Plus exam objectives. There are secure protocols that are listed in the Security Plus exam objectives. And if you had to maybe be familiar with a set of port numbers, that's the one I would recommend you be familiar with, is the port numbers associated with those particular ports. And I'm trying to bring up my list of exam objectives so we can find those secure protocols. and look through them. Those secure protocols are probably the only ones I would worry about. It's not an exam that's going to focus on drilling you on port numbers. It's not that kind of exam. If they don't put it in the exam objectives, my philosophy is you should not be wasting your time with that. Could they ask you port numbers on your exam? Could every question on your exam be about port numbers? Yes, because CompTIA tells you that they reserve the right to go off this list to talk about port numbers. However, because they have not themselves put any port numbers into this set of exam objectives, it's not a priority in any way. If it even comes up on the exam, you might have a question about it. And quite honestly, if you're someone who's taking your Security Plus exam, you probably already have familiarity with port numbers because you've already been in the industry for a year or you've already taken your A+ or Network Plus. Not a big deal. My philosophy is you could be spending your time learning what CompTIA told you could be on the exam rather than spending your time memorizing something that they have specifically not mentioned as being on the exam. I would go with the best possible of those scenarios, which is study what they told you is going to be on the exam. The extra time you study from their exam objectives is going to be much more productive than studying every other thing in the IT world that's not listed on that piece of paper.
Right. Right. Well, Professor, thank you very much. That has helped me out a lot. I just want to say that I think your videos are awesome, and I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Kevin. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
That's one thing, and I do see this a lot, is people say, here's my list of port numbers I need to know for Security Plus. Like, well, you don't need to know them. You would like to know some, I think. And if you had to know some, because people tend to focus on, I don't know, people tend to say, I hate having to memorize things for these exams. These exams are just a bunch of memorization. I hate going through this memorization process. So what do I need to memorize? Like, well, why are you doing that? You've even said you don't want to memorize. They haven't given you a list of those things to memorize. So why are you doing that? Same thing with knowing key sizes of particular encryption algorithms. That's not in the exam objectives. Why are you doing that? There's so many other things you could be learning right now that are specifically listed in the exam objectives. That's what you want to do, is learn what's in that set of it. Learn the exam objectives. Go through this list. Learn them all. If you finally get through the exam objectives and you were able to check off every single one of these bullets, okay, then you can maybe do some port numbers if you really, really want to. Even then, you still don't need to know key sizes for encryption. That's just well outside the scope. And interestingly enough, CompTIA dropped all those lists of hashing algorithms, encryption algorithms, block ciphers. They're all out of the 601. They're not even in there because they felt that it was just pure rote memorization. Who needs that? You're going to run into that stuff anyway. So why go through that? So I know everybody's studying those and are pounding them into their heads like, what? What? It's not even in the 601. It's not even in the 601. It's not there. So because they realize that's okay, people are getting way too deep in this. They're reading way too much into this. They're memorizing key sizes of the algorithms. That's not what they're trying to accomplish here. They were trying to talk to you about here's what people are using and how they're using it. So they've shifted the exam objectives so that they talk about WPA2 and the protocols that they use. Well, WPA2 uses AES through CCNP. It uses, so you're learning the algorithms, but you're learning how they're used rather than just, here's an algorithm, it's used for hashing, here's what we use it, which doesn't help anyone. So you'll still have them. You'll still have to learn some of that, but it's not that rote memorization thing on the 601. Just one of those situations. Back to the phone, 760. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from? I hear myself. You may want to mute that. Listen in on the phone. It will make everything better for you, I promise. We'll turn it down just a little bit until they hop on the phone. Or maybe they won't. Maybe this is going to be one of those things. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? It's worth a shot, though, wasn't it? We'll stick you back in the queue. So you don't have to call back anyway, but at least maybe you figure out where that mute button is. Make sure when you call in, you're listening in on the phone side and not the side with the the stream because there is a difference in the timing. And when I pick up the phone, on the phone side, you hear a beeping noise. Beep. So that's one that is a cue so that you'll know I just picked up the phone for you and have all of those things there. Might be useful to have all those things there. One never knows, to break all of that out. So let's take some other calls. Well, I've got some phone lines open. So I'm going to circle through and reset my screen so we'll clear things up on the phone. And we'll take some from the chat room and talk about some of that too. I talked earlier about the SY0-601 and being able to really understand what those differences are between those exams. So it might be worthwhile to also tell you that there is a point where we will be transitioning over from the 501 exam study groups to the 601 exam study groups. And right now, I'm really expecting to do that in November when the 601 exam is available. So my goal, and we're going to see if this happens, sort of maybe speaking completely out of turn, but my goal is when we do the November Security Plus study group, that those will be, in fact, the first study group I like to do exclusively 601 questions. So we're going to see if that happens. Obviously, I have to get all my content made and created up to that point. That's an important part of this, is I have to actually have it ready. But assuming all that's ready, I think we might do 601 questions in November and going forward. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of overlap between the 501 and the 601. So going forward, there will be a combination, what ultimately will be a combination of questions that kind of apply to both exams. But I think from November on, my goal is to give you a Security Plus study group that is solely focused on having you pass the 601 exam. Now, of course, you have 3 years of 501 content to go back to. So it's not like you're not going to have study materials available for the 501 exam, because the 501 exam is covered in those 3 years of study groups that you can go back and get replays on. And they're all on my website. They're all on my YouTube playlist. I have a YouTube playlist just for the Security Plus study groups. So you can go back through all the 501s that are in there. And there'll be a new playlist created for the 601. So some people have asked, when are we making that shift? That's the shift I want to make, is to put that through so that we have sort of a clear delineation going forward. And I think that's probably a pretty good place to do it. They release the exam in November. That's a perfect time to have a November study group that starts focusing on the 601 exam. Has to happen at some point anyway. So that's, I think, a good place to do it. I will still take questions in the after show, and some of the questions that we do during the regular show will obviously apply to the 501 as well. But I think for November, we're going to just pure 601. So I think that's the real focus. Let's see how we've done with that caller. 760. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? I hear myself really well on this phone line. The audio, I must say, on my side is really good. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
Hello, caller. You may want to turn down that stream on your side so you can hear this very well. What's your question?
Actually, I don't have questions. The thing is, I would like to thank you for your help, because I passed my exam last Monday.
Fantastic.
And it was very good experience. And to be honest with you, with your help, I got a lot of things to understand. It wasn't very easy, because the questions, they are always tricky. You don't know what they want exactly. Always you have to really read behind the scenes. And regarding, because I heard you talking about the port, I got one question regarding the port about access list, and they ask you to configure access lists for specific ports. I think the most important port are HTTPS, and also the port 80, and the most popular, the most popular ports, you have to know that. But the rest, I think if you study very hard, you will get the exam.
I think you're spot on with your analysis of that. The exam, I think those questions are tricky. I think they do try to fool you in some ways on that. And I'm glad you were able to get through it. And congratulations on your Security Plus certification.
I just have one question because now I'm thinking about the Cloud Plus.
Okay.
Because not too many people are talking about the cloud because it's very helpful, because if you get Security Plus the cloud, I think they give you a specific name like MSC or something like that in the middle. Because nobody doing the Cloud Plus, even they are similar in somehow. I don't know if you have any plan in the future doing something regarding to the cloud. It's very interesting too. It's very, very close together. I would like to have your opinion on that.
My opinion, and the chat room even mentioned it before I even had a chance to say it, they're spot on with what they are seeing in the industry. It matches what I'm seeing in the industry, is that there's a huge focus of people interested in getting cloud certifications. And obviously, if you haven't been watching what Microsoft has done in this really started just before the lockdown, but the beginning of this year, they completely revamped their entire certification line to focus on Azure. So the huge emphasis on Microsoft certifications going forward will be very cloud focused. And obviously, there's tons of customers on the Azure cloud. So that is a hugely popular cloud-based computing certification that people are working on. The other one that has been popular forever, it seems, is the Amazon Web Services cloud certification, or the Amazon cloud certification side. Those are probably the two biggest ones that you will run into. To some degree, the Google certification that they have done with kind of the system administrator or the administration one that they've done has a little bit of cloud computing in there because Google has a little bit of cloud computing put in there. But I think by far the one that most hiring managers want is either something Azure related or Amazon related. And there's so many comparisons there. There's so many of the structure and functions of those clouds are so similar because it's all based on similar standards across the board, that when you know one of them, you can easily take those ideas and apply it to the other one. So if I had to tell you, if you want a cloud certification, where should you go? I would probably point you over to Microsoft, or I'd point you over to Amazon and say, look at those first. And if that doesn't exactly fit what you're looking for, maybe then Cloud Plus might be an option.
Well, because I'm saying because in CompTIA, if you get, let's say, Security Plus the Cloud Plus, they give you a different name of a name certificate, another certificate name. I don't know how was that combination, because they have three different types. Let's say you get A Plus, Network Plus, and you get Security Plus. They give you a specific name.
Right.
You get Security Plus the Cloud. They give you a different name. That's why I'm planning to do the Cloud Plus. But the problem is, I check on internet. There's not too many things going on, but the cloud, not too many. Except there is a book you have to read. But regarding all the questions, the way they not like Security Plus, you have a lot of things. You provide us with a lot of information, and there is a lot of things on the internet you can find. But the Cloud Plus, that I find it very, very hard. If you could, I don't know.
I think
you advise me. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was a neat idea that CompTIA put together their stackable certification side so that they could get people sort of another certification to go on top of this. For example, if you have an A Plus and Network Plus, then you are considered a CompTIA IT Operations Specialist. If you have Network Plus and Cloud Plus, you're a CompTIA Cloud Admin Professional. The problem with these is that none of the hiring managers even know these exist. That this is really not caught on in the industry. The CCAP is not something they ask for. They don't know about it. They don't know what it means. They probably wouldn't know what it meant if you told them. They wouldn't have any interest in it. It's really more of a personal thing that you could say, hey, I passed these two, so now I have this stackable, and you can share it with your friends and your family. But hiring managers don't care too much about it. I would, and you could put it on your resume, but nobody knows what it is if you put it on your resume. In fact, it's much more valuable to put Network Plus and Cloud Plus on your resume and to leave off the CompTIA Cloud Admin Professional, because nobody has any idea what that has to do with anything. So that's, is it still useful though? I think the content that's in Cloud Plus is useful. I think that there's personally a good reason you might want to learn that content, but I don't think that having the stackable there is the reason why you should take the Cloud Plus.
Okay, see, thank you very much. I have another question, because I think 6 years ago I got my I+. But now when I go to CompTIA, I don't see that I have that A+ certificate. Is there any way that I can get it back or talk to them, or I don't know what I have to do, because like disappear.
Which certification was that?
A+ certification.
Okay, this is one that you had already passed your A+, or was there a specific
No,
thing?
I passed it a long time ago. I passed it 6 years ago.
Okay.
And recently I passed my Security Plus. But the problem is, do you know, when you pass the exam, they send for you like your profile.
Yep.
That you have this type of certificate. But I didn't see in my profile that I have A+, which I passed already a long time ago, 5 or 7 years ago.
Well, it could also be...
Is there any way to get back?
There's a couple of things you can do. First off, if you did not renew the A+, then it's no longer valid. It's only valid for 3 years unless you renewed it, in which time it would be valid another 3 years. So if you did go through the process of renewal, then there should be one available in your profile. Occasionally, you'll create a profile with one email address, and then you'll create a second profile with another email address, and one certificate is under one profile, one certificate is under the other. And if you contact CompTIA, they can merge those back together if that's the case. But if your A+ was one you took 6 years ago and you did not renew it, then that A+ is no longer valid anyway. There's no way to renew it at this point. You would have to take the A+ exams again.
Oh, okay, I see. I thought maybe if I pass the Security Plus, they will give me my A+, but that's the thing. It means I lost it because I have never renewed it. I have never think about it. Because I thought maybe you get it, it stay there for a long time.
They would have renewed it if you were in that 3-year window, but after 3 years, it's no longer valid. It drops off and it is not renewable.
But the problem is, in my period, I think when I took it, they were saying that this certificate for life, because I think after that, when they changed the law, it was for 3 years. Because to be honest with you, I got my A+ certificate in 2007, and at that time, maybe they said, okay, this A+ for good for life. But after that, I heard they changed it. You have to renew it. That's why I didn't think that mine has to be renewed.
All right, you're an old guy like me. 2007, much longer than 6 years ago. But if that's the case, it was before 2011, then you're absolutely right. Your A+ is good for life. It's a GFL, they call it, a good for life certification. And they should be able to find it in whatever profile is there under your name and add it to your existing profile. However, most employers don't want you to have the Good for Life certification. They want you to have the latest CE certification, continuing education certification. So it's really a question for the employer. Are they okay with your Good for Life? Some employers may be, but there may be some other employers, especially with the federal government in the United States, that really they require you to have the CE version or the renewable version of the certification. But if you've got the Good for Life, absolutely contact CompTIA, open a ticket with them, or give them a call. They will find your old profile and they'll merge them together.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. You are really a good teacher, I guess. My best teacher.
Best of luck.
Thank you for whatever you are doing for the people. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And thank you for calling, and congratulations on the certifications you've got now. And I love that you're thinking about the cloud stuff, because those technologies are what we will be doing in this industry for the foreseeable future. It has completely changed the way we create applications. It's changed the way we deploy those applications. It's changed the way we manage our networks, the way we manage people's workstations. It's changed everything. So I highly recommend that you have a look at those cloud-based. I think that's a great direction to go in. You know cloud well, you're going to do fine in this industry. No question. Absolutely. Let's go back to the phones real quick, and we will go to the 347. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from New York City. So I'm taking my Security Plus this Friday, actually, in a couple of days. And so I've been watching your videos. They've been amazing, and I've been taking a couple of practice tests. But one thing I noticed about the practice exams when I go over them is I always have trouble remembering the key differences between the as a software platform infrastructure. I keep having difficulties remembering when to use which one.
This is probably one of the biggest questions I get on the exam, is how to break those things out. There's a pretty popular breakdown of cloud models that I've added to the 601 course. So I'll give everybody a sneak peek into some of my 601 content, where this is a very popular diagram. You'll see it a lot of places, that shows the difference between having all of your technology on premises and then breaking out infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And then it takes a vertical approach to say, what does an application instance consist of? Well, you need a network, you need storage, you need servers. In most cases, you're doing virtualization with an operating system on top of it. There's probably some middleware there that talks between you and a database, or you and some other type of data. There's a runtime piece for the application. There's the actual data that the application uses, and then the application itself. And for infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, you can kind of draw these lines that designate when you would be using that type of technology. So a cloud model of infrastructure as a service kind of puts the virtualization and all the other pieces as provided by your third-party provider, the cloud provider, but then you have to manage the operating system, the middleware, the runtime, the data, and the application. Whereas with platform as a service, the only thing you have to manage is the data and the application. All of the other building blocks, like the runtime and the middleware, are provided by the provider. The operating system and virtualizations by the provider. The servers and the storage and the networking is all on the provider side. You really have very little that you have to provide. You contribute the data and the application. With software as a service, the provider does everything. I think a Gmail is a good example. You don't provide any data. You don't provide any application development. You don't do anything with the operating system. Everything is on the provider side. I think that's a pretty nice graphical view to show us where the data stops, where your responsibility stops, and where the cloud provider starts, and how you would categorize each one of those as infrastructure, platform, or software as a service. That might be something useful. And if you Google IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS and just do an image search, there's a million different examples of similar charts that might help you if you're trying to figure out how to fit that into the mix.
Okay. That definitely helped. Also, I wanted to know what's your take on this kind of path I'm thinking about taking. So I already have my A+ from last year.
Okay. And
I'm going for my Security Plus this Friday. Now, I didn't get the Network Plus, even though a lot of people do recommend taking that in between those two. But what I'm thinking of is I'm thinking about going straight into the AWS Cloud Associate certification. And because the thing is, I did study for the Network Plus. I was supposed to take it during the spring, but because of the lockdown, a lot of the testing centers closed, so I ended up forgetting a lot of the information. So I restudied it, and I was thinking about doing it through like at home, the exam, but they don't let you handwrite anything because they want complete like control.
Yes, and that same thing for the CompTIA exams as well.
Yeah, so right now, like only recently where I am, they reopened a lot of the testing centers.
Yep.
But I do remember a lot of the network stuff, but I'm thinking about going straight into the AWS Cloud Associate certification.
That's not a bad path. In fact, a lot that you're going to need to know about networking, you will learn along the way. There is a big networking component to the cloud side, especially when you get into VPCs. Usually each VPC is a separate IP subnet. So you have to have some knowledge of IP subnetting so that you can understand how to properly connect all of these VPCs together. You've got the transit router that's in the middle of all of that. You're connecting in VPN connections from a client site so that the client site can connect to the cloud VPCs that you've created on the Amazon side. You know, all those things have this foundation of networking that's really important, because if you don't understand that, you're going to completely mess up the routing. You're going to completely not understand where data is traveling from or to. There is a challenge with that. Now, does that require you take an entire Network Plus exam just to understand how to route IP? No, that's a tiny subset of what you would need to know for Network Plus. And maybe you just look at that section. There's just one part of a domain on Network Plus that talks about IP subnetting and what those subnets do and how you set up a routing table and how you understand that. Or maybe you look at the Cisco side of the CCNA and just pull out that section of the CCNA content and have a look at it. That gives you a feel for it. That's all you would have to do. That would kind of bring you up to speed on the minimum you would need to kind of start on the AWS side. I don't think Network Plus is required for that. I think jumping into AWS will kind of get you jump started into their technology, and then you can kind of pull the subnetting pieces off of YouTube or off of other courses to try to piece together what isn't included on the AWS. You certainly don't need to go through the entire Network Plus to become proficient on the Azure or the AWS side.
Thank you. That helps a lot. It saves me a lot of money too.
Yeah, that's true. That might help, and time.
So yeah, thank you for your help. Thank you for posting all the videos on all the exams. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. I'm glad you're able to take advantage of them, and best of luck with the cloud stuff.
Thank you. Take care.
It's an exciting technology on the cloud side. A lot of us haven't spent time on the cloud. If you haven't done anything with the cloud and understood the nuance of it, then I find some people are missing it. A lot of people miscategorize the cloud as, oh, it's just a data center. That's all. It's just a computer that's not at your place. It's at somebody else's place. But it's much bigger in scope, and it's much broader, and there's much more to it, obviously, than that. You can tell by the amount of money we are now spending on the cloud. Every company is spending on the cloud, that it is much bigger than all of that. It's remarkable to really break it out into all of its little pieces, because everybody, if you're somebody who's a developer, you're creating applications, you have a completely different approach to the cloud than someone who is a security professional. You have a different approach if you're a operations manager, if you are a network manager. And I don't necessarily think cloud is the future. I think the cloud we're in it now. It's done. It's sort of like how virtualization sort of snuck up on us. We weren't virtualizing, and then the next day, everything was virtualized. Exactly the same thing has happened. The cloud wasn't here, and now all of a sudden, everything's in the cloud. We're already there. So now we have to catch up in many ways. We have to kind of get there quickly. But the problem, if this is a problem, it's kind of a neat problem to have, we're still figuring it out. We're already there. We are in the cloud, and we're still creating it now as we speak. We're still finding things to tweak. We're still finding nuances. We're still finding ways to optimize it, ways to use it better. So what we learn on the cloud right now going to be very different, or at least optimized in a very different approach to different aspects of it in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. We'll find new ways to use it. We'll find better ways to take advantage of it. We're completely changing the way applications work. We're completely changing the way the underlying infrastructure works, all because the cloud is there, things we could not do when the infrastructure was in our data center. Let's go to the phone, 754. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Ivor. I'm calling from Miramar, Florida, by Miami.
Down on Miramar Parkway, where I used to live. How are you, sir? What can I do for you?
I'm good. I'm going to take the SSCP exam and the Security Plus exam pretty soon, the next few months.
Great.
And I'm watching your stream, and I believe I heard you say provider as a service, and I want to know what that was.
Did I do a provider as a service? I don't think I did quite that level, but the provider side, I was showing a presentation that was from my SY0-501 certification exam, which described cloud models. And I was describing what part of the cloud models are managed on the provider and which ones are managed on the client. There's certainly concepts in cloud-based models that are everything as a service, platform as a service, visibility as a service, security as a service, everything could seriously be a service. But I think what I was describing earlier is how you would separate out infrastructure, platform, and software in ways that would describe what the client manages and what the provider manages. And it was just a kind of a quick and dirty way to show the differences in those two.
Okay, thank you. And you said you could find more of those examples online, right?
Absolutely. I would recommend that you just go to the Google machine. I should be able to do this right now. Let's see if it will do this for me. I don't want to Google too much here. If you Google infrastructure, platform, software, service, and you just search for those and hit the image search, yeah, that pretty much does it right there. You would get images that kind of describe, it's that same picture. Everybody kind of has that same picture of those. If you look for IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, and then you click the image, that image link right at the top of your Google where it says images, that's what you'll get. Like, well, the first thing you'll get is a similar breakout of those, kind of what the industry uses to describe what you're managing and what somebody else is managing for you, and breaks it out as on-premises infrastructure, platform, and software. It's one that I had ready to go for the 501. It just didn't fit in there with what I was doing. So I'm using it in the 601 to have all of those there as well. You could see everybody uses the same picture. It's the same image. It's the same idea, just broken out visually.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you because I've used it for my A+ and Network Plus also. So you've helped me a lot.
Glad it helped out. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a tough one to get through too with all those. So that's pretty strong to have all those pieces there. If I started to break out the cloud information, if you look in the 601, it goes well beyond IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. You're going to be doing infrastructure as code. You're going to be doing everything as a service. There's a lot more cloud in the 601. But then again, there's a lot more of everything, it seems, in the 601. The only few things, I created a spreadsheet that breaks out everything that is new and everything that was dropped in the 601. And it seems that every single section of the 601 has more things in it. So they really didn't create a lot of new sections. They really just added on to the existing sections. There are a few that are brand new, but the vast majority of it is just added on to what was there. So the cloud section is bigger. The section on devices is bigger. The section on, you pick anything, it's bigger in the 601. That, I think, is the biggest challenge for those of us working on the 601 content. Anybody who is doing 601 videos or books right now is all in the same boat, is that we're effectively having to not only build a new course, we're having to build a course and a half. That's the real challenge. And once it's done, finally, we can hand it over to you and say, here you go, here's the whole thing. But these things take time. It's almost, for A+, for example, it's almost like that. For A+, it's two separate courses. It's the 1001 and the 1002, or the Core 1 and the Core 2. That's two separate courses we have to build for A+. Think of now building 1.5 for Security Plus. So I think that's the one that is the biggest challenge. Question in the chat room. I recently passed the 501 Security Plus. Congratulations. With the new 601 coming up, do I need to retake the exam? Is your 501 certificate still valid? Excellent questions. The 501, you passed your certification. Now, it doesn't matter which test you took to pass it. If you take the 501 and pass it, you're Security Plus certified. If you wait till November and take the 601 exam, you're Security Plus certified. Exactly the same. As soon as you pass your exam, it is now good for 3 years. So let's say that you wait until in November, you take your 501, you now have earned your Security Plus certification. That Security Plus certification is good for 3 years. Somebody who took the 601 exam on the same day earned the Security Plus certification. They earned exactly the same certification. There's no difference in the two. One doesn't say 501 and one doesn't say 601 because it's the same certification. In fact, it's the same certification that somebody who took the 401 exam has, as long as they kept it renewed. So you've earned the Security Plus. It doesn't matter which questions you answered to earn it. You now have your Security Plus certification. And the moment you earn it, it's good for 3 years, regardless of how many different exams are changed in the meantime. CompTIA could create a new exam every day. Tomorrow's the 701. The day after that's the 801. The day after that's the 901. The day after that's the 1001. They could do a new one every day. But as long as you're certified, doesn't matter what they do with the questions. The thing that's important is you already earned the Security Plus certification. So if you've passed your Security Plus, you're good for 3 years now. It doesn't matter that the 601 has come out. It doesn't matter what they do with the certification tests. All that matters is that you're Security Plus certified for 3 years. Your 501 is not valid for 3 years. Your Security Plus certification is valid for 3 years. The 501 was the set of questions you answered that earned you your Security Plus certification. So as long as you are now keeping that certification current, you will never have to take the exam again. You can simply renew your Security Plus certification. Before 3 years is out, you renew it. It's good for another 3 years. Before that 3 years is out, you renew it. It's good another 3 years. You've now gone 9 years and never taken the exam again. Ideally, you would never take the exam again. There's just no reason for that. There's so many other ways to renew your certification. So that's what I would recommend you do too. Have a look at the CompTIA website on certifications. They will tell you about that. On the Security Plus, from the 501 to the 601, there are a dramatic set of differences between the two. It is a exam that is 50% larger, but only pulls 50% of the content from the 501. So in many ways, it is a brand new full exam that also includes half of the old one. It's big. I can't stress this enough. I detail exactly how big this is on my YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube, I'm going to pull up my YouTube studio here so I can find it. The video that you are looking for is a video called Why You Shouldn't Wait for the SY0-601 exam. And I think I need to pull it up on the YouTube. Here we go. What you're looking for once the ad plays, or I can show you. So what you're looking for is the one right here. Why you shouldn't wait for the SY0-601 Security Plus exam. Now, ultimately, some of you are going to have to take the 601. This video is not going to be good after July of 2021. But until then, if you have the ability to take your 501, I highly recommend it. And I explain in this video why I say that. I explain in the video, I answer all the questions that you've just asked about. What about my 501? Isn't it still good? How long is it good? Why would I take this one over the other one? Don't employers want the new one than the old one? Spoiler alert, they don't. They don't care as long as you're Security Plus certified. I haven't yet found anyone who cares, who is so, feels so strongly about it that they insist that you get the 601 test, because that doesn't make sense. If you took the 401 exam and got Security Plus certified and renewed your certification, you're Security Plus certified. As far as anybody is concerned, you are just as Security Plus certified as someone who takes their exam and passes it today. So that's why. That's the important part. And I explain all that in the video, and I go through all the topics. I show you the count between the two to help you understand why I say that. Now, even after doing that, as I mentioned, people have said, I don't care. I'm going to take the 601. I'm going to wait. That's absolutely a thing you can do. You can absolutely wait and take the 601. Just be aware that when the 601 is released in November, you will have relatively limited resources available to study from. It's going to be nothing like what you have today. Today, there's tons of resources available for the 501. In November, there's not going to be this ton of resources available. So that's just another thing to think about. And I detail it in that video. I think that video is the best place to go. I can't possibly go through every scenario, everything I talk about in that video here, but I think that's a good one to go through. If you're interested at all in trying to figure out, should I wait? Should I not wait? Do I trust this? What do I do? That's what you should do. The 501 will indeed be available until July of 2021. As we say again, I should just put it up on the crawler. The 501 will be available until July of 2021. That's right. So if you earn the certification now, that certification will be good. I think that's a great way to put it, is actually spell it out. That certification will be good until September of 2023. There you go. That puts it in perspective, doesn't it? So there you go. So that's where I would, if I'm thinking through all of these things, that's where I would focus. I think that's a good place to go with all of this. And maybe that would help. Maybe that help if you're working through which one do I do, which one don't I do. I think those are the places you should go with both of that. Well, we've gone through more than an hour of our after show, but hopefully that's giving you some perspective of what you need to know for the 501, maybe what you need to know for the 601, or what you should at least prepare for. Come back next month. It will be probably our last 501 study group before we transition into the 601 content. And of course, check in at the beginning of next month. We have our 2 A+ study groups and our Network Plus study group. You can find out about all of those on the Professor Messer website. There's a calendar link at the top, or you can simply go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out when the next live event is going to be. We'd love to have you come back for those as well. Thank you for being here today for our first hour. Thanks for being here in the after show. We love doing this, and we're so glad you're here to do it with us. And we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everyone.